We are live. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday Fastball with Crusty Canuck. And today, my guest is none other than Frank P. VAUGHN, commentator, blogger, farmer, family man, former PPC candidate in the last federal election, all-around great guy, and patriot. Without further ado, welcome, Frank, to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Welcome. Yes. It's been an interesting week in Canadian politics so far.
I'm longing for a week that isn't interesting. It's been a long time since it's been boring. Remember the nice cozy days of 2014 or 2015 or basically anything between 2015 and 2019 was kind of boring. I mean, we just talked about budgets and Groper Gate and like normal stuff, normal bad stuff. Now it's the last year it's bewildering every single day.
It is. It's quite annoying too. Because I said in my podcast there in my last episode, I'm actually getting tired of bitching about the Trudeau mantra and parts that fill the gap. But in a way, it's the more we're not speaking about it, the more it's going to keep carrying on, and we've got to do something about it. So for my audience out there, please indulge my audience in what got you started in doing your blog and doing the work that you do.
I think I've always cared about history, geography, the country, the way things fit together in general. Ever since I was a kid, my dad put in my hands a history of the Second World War, and I think I was 4 or 5, and I had no idea how to read it. And I actually had to learn how to read this book. It took a couple of years to actually figure out how to get through it. And it's always kind of been in there. Even when I was partying and doing crazy things when I was younger, it was always the thing that sort of occupied the back of my head. And then I got involved in debating climate change, actually, I would say 5 to 10 years ago. And I was really going hard with, because I had an awakening. I had convinced my family the world was going to end, that they had to change all their light bulbs. They had to go out and buy fluorescents. They had to do all this stuff. So I convinced everybody. And then I decided to look at the other side, and I'm like, I was wrong. And then I had to go back and explain to everybody how wrong I was. And then I was on a mission, right, to correct my wrongs. But that's where I started. Kind of got talking about American politics more in 2015, 2016, got involved in the CPC leadership in 17, obviously got involved with the PPC in 18, 19. And then there was the Rob Hoogland case in BC, got involved in that. And then I saw this COVID thing happening over in China. While the government was telling you to go eat Chinese food and it was racist to halt plane traffic. And basically now we're here. So it's just kind of, it just happened. And it just spawns from my own interest in how things work and how things are going.
Outstanding. So basically you see something wrong and you want to talk about it. You want to get it out in the general public. If
you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a little argumentative. I like to,
no.
I do like to discuss ideas.
Not at all. No.
Well, and one of the things that bothered me when I was growing up is that I was always taught, you don't talk about religion and you don't talk about politics. And that attitude's kind of got us where we are because we're very supplicant. We're very passive people. So that's why what's happening right now, you can talk all you want and it feels oftentimes like you're just throwing words off an impenetrable wall where everybody just, if you ask a group of people, do you trust the government? Nobody will put up their hand. But they'll listen to every single thing the government says. The same thing with the media. Do you trust what you see on TV? No, but they do everything the TV tells them to. So it seems impossible sometimes, but you have to keep trying.
True. Yeah, I agree. When I left the service, I was just itching to get my 2 cents worth out there too. And there were nights where I'd be doing my patrols and range control, what have you. And, I just put my cell phone on and I have my Wi-Fi that I paid up and I'd watch your videos. I'd watch some of Adam's videos. I'd watch just other points of view out there. And just from my military blinders showing me this, it started doing this and that. Okay, so why am I here in the service? What am I doing? Oh, wow, this is what I'm doing. Okay, that's a good thing. But in the same sense, when I leave the service, what else am I going to be doing? So yeah, I work jobs and I pay my bills and my mortgage and try to keep my wife and I afloat and all that stuff too. But every day you're seeing how they like to say the goalpost moving, right? And I used to coach a lot of soccer too, so I know exactly what it's like when you're trying to reach that goal, to get that perfect pass or to score that perfect headshot, and then the goalpost on the other side. You're like, what's going on? So I can see that metaphor being relevant in regards to everything from the NDP out here in Alberta to what the NDP did in Ontario and to what the Conservatives are doing right now in Ontario, not to mention the federal BS too. So I'm thankful that there's guys like you online out there getting the words out, getting information, and doing it because it's the right thing to do, not because, oh, I'm going to get paid lots of money and become the new OnlyFans sensation. You know, that's a different story.
We are not pretty enough for that.
Well, you know, my modeling days are long behind me now, so, you know.
You're not hitting the PT every day like you used to.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. You know, I could stand to lose a few pounds, but then again, you know, I'm into my 40s, and the only thing I've got to prove to people is that I care, and I'd like to lead again on a federal level. So, what inspires you though, besides being a family man? Now we know you're a family man. You have a small farm operation. You predominantly raise garlic, is it? You grow a lot of garlic?
At this stage, yeah, that's predominantly what I do.
Nice.
With the farm. Yeah, I used to do, it's gone through so many different evolutions. The farm has changed every single year that I operated it. And to the point now where it's garlic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, because I know we all, every time we go grocery shopping, I look at garlic, and it's either Argentinian garlic, which, you know, is still legit, then there's Chinese garlic.
Yep. It's weird. It's weird stuff because it goes soft in 4 weeks. And I've never known a garlic that you couldn't, when I pull my garlic out of the ground, you should easily be able to have it still in the spring, hard and ready to use. Like and anybody that I know that grows garlic in Ontario, it's the same thing. And we always talk with fascination about the nature of Chinese garlic and why it behaves the way that it behaves.
Well, yeah, it shouldn't go bad in a month. It should be everlasting when you think of it, you know, like a long thing.
It's a very easily stored crop. Yeah.
Yeah. It's low maintenance. I know it's a lot of work, but I know it's low maintenance.
It's a lot of work in 2 parts of the season. And then the rest of the time it's pretty mellow, you know, but there's some maintenance you have to do, but when you're planting and when you're harvesting, you're going hard. Yeah.
Most definitely. Yeah. So your PPC history, what got you into running for the PPC party at the time?
Basically, the knowledge that there's, and it's even more apparent now that there's not much choice in Canadian politics, and that there needs to be a vehicle that's more people-centric. The Conservative Party of Canada is infamous for having questionable quote-unquote leadership votes. They're infamous for blocking people at conventions from actually having their opinions and bringing forward motions. And there's a lot of dirty shenanigans, and the Liberal Party does it too. But in fairness, Liberal leadership elections, generally speaking, are pretty fair. Trudeau won, and so did the other guys, Ignatieff and Dion, which were really surprising. But anyway, but it's a narrowing of perspective. So when the PPC came along, what I saw was an opportunity that Max was proposing to have a people-centric party and to propose a party structure that would benefit the members and actually be honest to the members and be more populist, decentralized. We needed to try. Let's put it that way. I needed to try, but I felt that after the election, some things would have to happen that did not happen, which is why I left. I had an expiry date on how long I was going to give to it. You know, so that's why I tried. I tried for the idea of a people-centric party. That's why. And Canada needs different voices. Like our democracy is broken, and my view on that's evolved to the point where I don't know if you can fix it through a ballot, through a federal ballot anyway, voting for a federal party, because so much of the country loves what's happening. They just love it. And so you're really fighting an uphill battle. Like,
and that's what scares me. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the minority for sure.
Yeah, especially around your area where the voter base, you know, the GTA and east of the GTA is the hub of the voter base, especially next to, let's say, to Montreal and that area. The voter base for
that
everything.
Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto triangle, that whole area basically dominates political thinking.
And that's what's scary, because we've all seen the unicorn believers and the fairy farts and the pixie dust farmers. And which brings me to the next point. What was your you got to tell my audience again too, I still got to hear this. What were your preferred pronouns again?
Lord Captain Commander. And if you do not refer to me as Lord Captain Commander, you are a bigot.
Shit. Well, I go by Sparkle, Farkle, and No Soy, so we could go with that too. Sparkle, Farkle, and No Soy.
Sparkle, Farkle, No Soy. All right.
Exactly.
Sparkle, Farkle, No Soy, Crusty.
That sounds like a foot fungus now that I think about it.
But yeah, I mean that even that bit of humor, it speaks to where we are as a society. We're obsessed with very meaningless things, very libertine things. We're obsessed with where we put our sex organs and in what orifice we put them. We're obsessed with our identities. We're extremely narcissistic, and we like our free stuff. And people are talking about UBI. Well, the liberals are talking about UBI. The NDP are talking about UBI, and this idea that we need to stop it, which I would agree with. I like people who try to at least look after themselves or earn their way through life. But I think it's a done deal. I don't see any political will here in Canada to stop that. People want it. They don't care about economics. They don't care about the details. They double right click on every EXE and install it without reading the privacy statements. They give away their privacy at every single opportunity. They give away their rights at every single opportunity. So why would they? I just don't see a will to stop this momentum that's moving Canada in a certain direction, which is why I kind of look at Quebec, and I think how has Quebec manipulated Confederation so successfully? And they did it by having a strong sovereignist movement. They applied pressure to Ottawa. They got special treatment. They get all kinds of money and transfers, and they have in a multicultural Canada, where Trudeau says we're the first post-national state and we have all of these different wonderful, diverse, whatever. Then you have Quebec, which has these language laws and all of this other stuff trying to preserve French culture, which runs absolutely counter to what Trudeau is trying to sell at the federal level. And he says nothing about it. Nobody says anything about it. Now, how did Quebec do that? They held Confederation hostage. And in that way, they're probably the only province that did it right, because it was supposed to be a union of largely independent provinces that had their own flavors, kind of like what Switzerland does, or in a sense, like what the United States does with states, which is why I'm starting to sympathize more and more with the idea of the Western separatists, even if it is just to apply pressure to Confederation. There's a lot of problems there, as I've highlighted in the past, but I mean, who's going to do it? Even the PPC, they don't go far enough. They're not addressing the Senate reform. They don't address the problems with our Constitution or Confederation. They don't. It's everybody talks about the policies and being bold, but they're not bold enough. I mean, you have to fix the fact that there's only one vote in this country. It's such a backward system, and the West is always going to get stomped, and the conservative vote is always going to get stomped the way that this is arranged. But they'll keep taking Alberta's money. That's not a problem.
Oh, of course, right?
No
it's like
problem
leaving
there.
home. It's like leaving home, yet having mom and dad pay your bills. It's, I've got a lot of respect with Quebecers that I've worked with in the military, and I could tell you at least 99% of them did not like the separatist motion whatsoever, dating back to the first Meech Lake, to the second in the 90s, and to the rumblings that we would hear throughout our careers. There was maybe one individual that I met that was from La Belle Province that was a staunch separatist, yet he was in a Canadian uniform. So I just had to remind him, it's like, buds, you're accepting the Queen shilling per se, and yet you're totally against anything that's Canadian, So think about that for a second, right? Because we all have to take an oath and wear the uniform. Whether you believe it or not, you still got to take the oath. So it's just a matter of understanding where you're from. I can sympathize maybe briefly at one time when they try to force the languages down people's throats in regards to whether English or French. But I've dealt with a lot of Quebecers that would have trouble speaking certain words in English, and I would gladly correct them. I wouldn't be a rude prick about it.
Sure.
I would gladly correct them. And in return, I got the same thing when I was trying to speak French. Great. That simple understanding is something that should be second nature to most Canadians in general. But when it comes to Alberta separation, I'd have a little more sympathy towards Alberta separation than I ever will with Le Bloc. Right? To me, Le Bloc doesn't stand on anything other than it's all about us and the rest of you guys suck. That's how I always feel about the Bloc.
Yeah.
I'll give it to Blanchette. He's an excellent speaker. He's an intelligent man, especially when it came to this last budget. He made a valid point about, okay, you're looking after seniors, but they have to be 75 and older. Why not 65, like the rest of the seniors in this country? When you're 65, you become a senior. Like legally, now you're a senior. You're not working anymore. You're either getting a pension from whatever company you work with or whatever. Okay, now you qualify for the CPP, and then now what? You're only going to put emphasis on 75 and older? Well, there's still a lot of seniors out there working now because of policies from 2015, 2016, and 2017. So which is it? Now I give them hats off for that too. But when I look at the separatist movement from Quebec, I don't see why. They may always made a point. So we have lots of energy in Quebec. Say, yeah, because you buy it from the Saudis. You don't buy it from Alberta.
Well, that's good. And that's a big problem. And it's not going to be fixed just by enforcing pipelines to the east, which I'm totally in favor of and would like to see. There's an attitude problem. If we're going to be a united country, then people in the east part of the country who routinely in poll after poll after poll vote against doing anything for Alberta's energy development other than sending it to China, which is a big problem. They routinely vote to keep bringing in oil from Saudi Arabia, or at least indicate their will to do so. But it's Canada's the vehicle through which Quebec has prospered so much. So instead of figuring out how to keep that prosperity moving and growing, it's like they want to. It's like there's an attitude of taking, but not giving. The rest of the nation, like each province in Confederation, needs to give something back to the other provinces in Confederation. And unfortunately, it seems to only go in one direction. And that's
I see that. And I've had numerous debates with people. I try to have debates. I've had some nasty emails the past couple weeks. It's quite interesting. I should send you some copies of those. You'll probably get quite a chuckle out of some of the comments.
I always like other people's drama because I got enough of my own.
Well, I had one clown who was telling me that I was a traitor because I didn't realize what Stephen Harper did in regards to China. Now, I told this individual, it's like, well, I'm not harping about Harper, no pun intended. I'm talking about what's going on right now. What's been happening since 2015, the people in charge, right? Because if you want to get technical, fine, we might as well blame every prime minister after Sir John A for certain decisions. But now, this is what I'm looking at now, what's going to be happening in our next economic future, if we're going to have one. And this clown I'm sure he was like angry while he was typing this to me, just reeing in his jeans. Oh my God, I can't believe he had this opinion. Was losing his shit, calling me a traitor, and he was pissing on the troops and pissing on military service, and we don't need the military because because the Liberal Party we have these pension plans and all these loopholes and safety nets. And it's like, okay, well, I remember typing and said, well, what safety net is the economy in now? Oh, you don't understand the wonderful things that the Trudeau legacy is promoting. And I'm like, okay, troll, delete. So just the Trudeau legacy, that's what kind of gave it away. The legacy, the dynasty, really. So I'm just like, okay. And it just goes to prove how many people are really sitting on their hands and they're just tossing things out there just to try to save face. And it's like, sorry, these guys are wrong. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Honestly, Frank, they don't. When I watched the budget, Miss Freeland was talking about her shoes. Tradition or not, I don't care. Like, whoop, you got a pair of shoes. Great.
Very out of touch. Very out of touch.
It's like, well, I got a pair of fancy shoes too. I love my dancing shoes. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Put on my motorhead, dance the night away. But
well, and when you have a Liberal government that openly pays the media to produce fluff pieces. If I open my local newspaper, all I see in my local newspaper is local journalism initiative reporters, which is federal government paid reporters. And then the advertisements that sustain the newspapers are about half government nowadays, municipal, Ontario, and federal advertisements bought in the newspapers. You have they're paying social media influencers to put out puff pieces and promote their stuff. So when you're talking to a true anonner, I think it was who was it? Was it Tucker Carlson that dubbed them true anoners? I can't remember, but
I think it was somebody he had in his show. Yeah. Okay.
But when you're actually interacting with people online and they are promoting the Liberal Party, a lot of them will talk in the same terms and they will share the same videos. And it is not a conspiracy theory to think, it's not a tinfoil hat notion to think that that person that you're talking to was paid for by your tax dollars to argue with you about how great the Liberals are. And it's often anonymous people. You don't know their name. They don't put their faces on camera. They don't act in their own names on Twitter. It's these different accounts. And there's I blocked one the other day because I was convinced that they were a true anonner. This person, posing as a veteran, by the way, puts out a tweet. And so I'm going back and forth and I start to recognize the pattern. So I block that. And there's this other person that's tweeting in response to this person's tweet. So I blocked the initial person, and the person that is tweeting in response says, "Oh, how dare you block me?" And I said, "Okay, so there you go. You have two accounts, and you're using both, acting like you're talking as two separate people, and you're doing like all this." I'm like, "Yeah, I bet you any money that's a paid social media influencer."
It's got to be,
and they're open about it.
Yeah. It's got to be.
So this is, it's, you can, and I've been critical of Harper, and I've been critical of Chrétien and Martin because they slowly opened the door. But since 2015, the door's been kicked wide open to the point
it's off the hinges now.
It's off the hinges. It absolutely is. And if we want to get it back, it's going to have to be people who weren't involved in the sellout of the country in the first place, or at the very least can talk about the sellout of the country and their responsibility for doing it in the past tense, own that responsibility and explain where they made their mistakes. And I don't see anybody that's actually doing that.
Absolutely right. The closest thing I could think of any politician in recent history, let's say in the past month, that's actually owned something was what I mentioned to you before the show about Doug Ford kind of apologizing for his extreme measures. It's a gesture. Fine. Okay. Yeah. I guess in his little cheesecake head, he's going, okay, I screwed up. Maybe I should have stepped back and maybe I should say this, but proof of being the pudding if they actually get rid of the restrictions. But fan wickeder than now, it's becoming increasingly clear that coexistence with the left is not possible. Secession may be the only way to resolve this. What do you think?
It's one possibility that it has a lot of problems. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. There's a lot of China's big in the West. It's not just the amount of money they have involved in the oil sands, but there's also university investments. There's also land holdings that the CCP has. They're laundering money through the Fraser Valley in Vancouver. There's, all you got to do is talk to real estate agents down there and you'll find out exactly what is happening. So there's a big problem outside of Ottawa. Now, Ottawa is obviously very heavily influenced by Beijing, but Beijing is the real problem. So there's gold mines, there's other mineral mines, there's the lumber, there's the oil sands, there's all of these issues that kind of stand between here and Western separatism and an actual republic. But that's not to say that it's not worth trying or attempting to do, because it might be the only thing that Ottawa actually pays attention to. Because I've never seen a prime minister, even Trudeau Sr., didn't piss on the West the way this guy does.
Yeah. No, entirely.
It's shameless. And it's painful for me to watch here in Ontario because I know the frustration is always looking east. And there's a lot of good people here in Ontario that empathize and sympathize and want that wealth developed and want Alberta to prosper and the West in general to prosper. It's like they want to destroy the country. And if that's the case, what do you do?
Well, logically, we would say have gun will travel. But then again, they want to ban all airsoft too. So anything facsimile to a firearm. But I'm not going to encourage any kind of violence for that matter too. But it's getting to a point where we're all dogs and we're getting backed into corners. And as well as I do, when you back a dog in a corner, what happens? They either submit or they're going to come out fighting. So, it all depends what kind of wolf DNA it's left in their stream. that'll get them to get them up, pounce out, and try to rip your throat out. So, but I digress here.
Well, and then you have to also consider the political violence that's tolerated from the left.
Yeah,
they want to show up. They want to rip down statues. They want to be offended by everything. They want to. It's so funny. They want to talk about equality, but the only word they seem to know nowadays is racialized, which is one of the most racist words I've ever heard.
Yeah, I would agree. It is.
It's such a ridiculous term. It's a fundamentally ridiculous term. The second you say somebody's racialized, you're the one that's putting them in a category. It's so. That's the thing. They talk about the threat of right-wing violence, and I'm always looking around saying, well, where is it? Can you show me where it is?
I haven't seen
it. I'm waiting to see it. Like, where is it? I see inner cities burning down in the United States, but I also see it here in Canada. But I don't see this right-wing offensive that you're talking about. The CCFR, they had a march in Ottawa 6 months ago. I can't remember. I think it was September. They had a big march. They had a few thousand people up there, all gun owners, just marching for firearm rights, and nobody got shot. Nobody brought any guns. There was no violence. It was orderly. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. Common signage. It was a structured thing. Where's the threat? They didn't try to overthrow the government. So why are we tolerating violence from the left? But the focus is on this so-called myth of violence on the right.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at someone like the Proud Boys, for example, I remember watching Gavin from the Rebel there when he was talking about it. And really, when you think about it, it's just a silly group. It started off as a silly group. The initiation, I think, consisted primarily of, okay, we're going to sit here and punch you, and you have to name 5 breakfast cereals. And if you don't name 5, we're going to keep punching you until you do, and it wasn't like your typical, punch in the face. It was just 2 guys, beating on you just to make you laugh. And that was the thing, Western chauvinists, they call themselves. Now, because of all the hype and because of all the other BS, they're put on the so-called domestic terrorist radar because of it, because of what happened in the Capitol last U.S. election. And we're thinking, what a joke. They're like, really? I've talked to a few Proud Boys and started my podcast here, and they were nothing. They were not.
Yeah. And the whole thing, the whole thing with the Capitol, when you have the police open up the barricades, they open up the doors, they invite everybody in, and you have these so-called revolutionaries walking in between the fenced off aisleways and not walking outside of the bars. It was such a contrived situation. And then you hear about the Proud Boys being this white supremacy organization. I got a friend here in Cobourg, Colin Brown. He's a lawyer. He's a black lawyer, and he's a Proud Boy, a very open Proud Boy. So they can't go after him as a white supremacist because the story doesn't fit. He used to come out. He came out to my debates, and he's just like, anybody wants to call you a racist, just send them over to me, and I'll have a chat with them. But they can't get him as a white supremacist, so they're trying to get him disbarred as a lawyer because he's involved as a Proud Boy. And this guy, he's on the bar, doesn't have a criminal record. He's an upstanding citizen. He's a taxpayer, and he's not allowed to express himself in the way that he sees fit. So it's free speech for some, no free speech for others. What they want is they want to make sure that any alternative to the paradigm that's in charge cannot get organized enough to make a challenge. They've seen what happened in the United States with the Tea Party, for one thing. The rise of populism under Donald Trump. They do not want those kinds of forces unleashed here. The worst thing would be an actual organic leader that didn't have ties to the establishment and a history of selling us out to China before he turned populist. If you actually had a grassroots populist movement rise up here in Canada, that's the worst nightmare, because it might actually attract enough people to do something and flip the script. And they're afraid of that.
Well, of course,
they don't want to lose the agenda.
Well, they have their seats, and they have their ridings, and they have the typical policies that have been instilled since the late 1960s, right? You look at the Liberal ridings in Toronto, right? It's ridiculous. The amount of ridings, every federal riding they have in that city, just because of the way the city is oriented. Now, in this riding here, we got about 100,000 people, right? What's Freeland's riding? It's what, maybe 20,000 plus, a very, very posh neighborhood in Toronto. Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
that speaks for itself, you know. That's I don't know. It's hard to say because when I look at that schematic, when I look at that drawing, I'm thinking, holy shit, really? Look at all
Hmm.
those seats they're gonna have, right?
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
and
And
I just
it's hard to pry that away. The cities always look with scorn on the rest of the nation,
Mhm,
and as time goes by, the cities are getting more and more out of touch with what actually makes a nation tick. And it's a fatal flaw of democracy, which is why when the founding fathers of the United States put forth their vision, they said we need a chamber that represents the population, we need a chamber
mhm,
that represents the land, and we need a strong executive that represents neither, and we need a judiciary that can screw with all three of those, so that we
mhm,
have all of these balance of power. We have an authoritarian aspect in the executive, we have a land geography aspect in the Senate, we have a populist Congress, and we have an independent judiciary.
mhm,
Canada just has one democratic process where the majority rules, not even the majority, all you need is 40%. But the fact of the matter is, even if it wasn't just 40%, when you have 35% voting Liberal, 15% voting NDP, and I'm downplaying it, 5 to
mhm,
8% voting Green, 4% voting Bloc, you're already up against 60 to 62% of the population that's voting for outright socialism every single time.
mhm.
So where does Alberta fit in all that? Where does the land get a say? Where's the
Yeah.
veto power when the population wants to impose its will on other people and make other people suffer for their convoluted notion of what the world should look like?
Mhm,
Canada needs to be revamped if it's going to
mhm,
survive, and that's why I think maybe Canada has an expiration date. It's a tough thing to say, and I don't
mhm,
mean as someone who's served and in the military and gone to fight for this nation. That's probably sounds harsh, but I don't know how you get past, without a complete rework of the Constitution, how you get past this
mhm,
population issue, this rule of the dictatorship of the majority that
mhm,
Socrates talked about. It's bad, and it's
mhm.
getting worse.
Yeah, I would agree. And I've actually pondered, like, I'm libertarian based. I want people to do their thing and not worry about what the neighbor thinks. I don't care if Bob and Steve have a barbecue and they have a big gay fest next door. I don't care. I want people to do what they want to do without hitting people taking their stuff, just to summarize my libertarian stance. And the Canada I fought for, as far as I'm concerned, was always inclusive, always fair, always democratic. It didn't matter what color you were or how you identified. You can go get a job and become prosperous and thrive. Pay your share of taxes, caring about your business. There's no such thing as a perfect life. What's perfect for you may be mundane to me, but we can understand that and live in harmony per se. Now that harmony is being questioned. Every time you fill up your truck or your car, you're supposed to be guilted. Oh my God, the environment. Every time you question an educated official, oh my God, you're ignorant. Oh my God, you're misogynistic or you're xenophobe. This ongoing guilt trip is turning this country and especially the West into a real shit show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gun owner. Oh my God. Oh, what's wrong with you? If you love guns so much, why don't you just go live in the States? And it's like, well, no, I want to live here.
Well,
I
and as a gun owner, you haven't
yeah.
committed a crime. You can't commit a
Mhm,
crime and legally own guns. You have to jump
mhm,
through every hoop as it is. You're
mhm,
screened every single day, not for criminal charges, but
mhm.
just for interdiction. So if you
Yeah.
attend an anti-lockdown protest and you get handed a fine, you can probably expect a call from the Canadian Firearms Office asking you what you were doing out in public, sir, enjoying
Mhm,
free speech. Should you really own a gun if you enjoy free speech? Um, it's uh, it's a drastically terrible situation that we're coming into for anybody that just sort of values individual freedom.
mhm. And that's the thing. I'm not going to hurt anybody with my guns. I'm not going to hurt anybody with my car, too, or my truck. Like when I look at the logic of these leaders who want to annihilate everyone's firearm ability, then if I was to use their logic, I would have to say, okay, well, then every time someone drinks a beer, here's a ticket just in case you DUI.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's really the public safety. So we're being herded like cattle. The song we were listening to there earlier too, without doing a copyright thing. The song is called "The Great Cull." and it's from a band called Killing Joke, and it was really, it's when you listen to it, and if you get over the British pronunciations of certain words like vitamins, they say vitamins, it's interesting, the take. And this song was written about 15 years ago. So it's like, okay, it gets you thinking. And when I look at these leaders, it doesn't matter what brand, it doesn't matter if conservative or liberal, I ignore the NDP because they're just commies to me, but I'll listen to them. They all want the same thing. They all want to herd people. They don't want to look after people. They don't want to produce proper defense. They want to produce proper fiscal responsibility. It's all about herding and trying to get the thought process in their favor. Not about protecting your right to grow your garlic and raise your family, or my right to live with my marriage and be happy and be prosperous. It's about, we have to change the way you think and the way you approach things, because that's the greater good.
Well, it's the difference between representative government or governance in general and social engineering. And that's what they're engaged in now entirely, is social engineering. It's how can we get people to do what we want them to do. And you mentioned, the great con of climate change being this catch-all that doesn't do anything for the environment. Like the first political thing I did was, I think 13 or 14 years old. I wrote the Chrétien government and I said, "You're killing all the trees. What are you doing?" And so they sent me this book about this thick, and it was all about how good they were to trees. And I was like, oh, wow, this is glossy and it's beautiful and whatever. And I was worried about it.
It's pretty.
It doesn't, the fixation on climate change and CO2 doesn't do a damn thing for the environment. And we are not the problem anyway. It was, there's a documentary. It's called Seascape or something like that. It's on, apparently it's on Netflix. But it talks about, it popularizes something that I've been beating my head off the wall for 10 years, and that is this Pacific garbage patch and these plastics in the ocean. So this guy, he goes out there, and his intention is to show that single-use plastics are killing the Pacific Ocean. But when he gets out there, he finds out, after surveying and actually doing some science, he finds out that single-use plastics are only about 0.1% of that particular huge, massive Texas-sized garbage patch. 49% of it is Chinese fishing nets, plastic Chinese fishing nets. So not only is China the world's greatest quote unquote polluter when it comes to CO2, and are the world's greatest polluter when it comes to heavy metals, when it comes to plastics in their riverways and dumping into the ocean, when it comes to mismanagement of their environment, in real terms, they are the world's #1 polluter. But in their own terms, their bogus terms about CO2, China's the biggest person. And when it comes to the oceans, they're taking these nets and they're dropping them to the bottom of the ocean, and they're tearing everything out. They're destroying all the coral life, all the coral reefs. They're killing it all. And the coral is one of the biggest things when it comes to, if you want to talk to them in their terms, drawing CO2 into the ocean and storing it in coral, that's one of the biggest things. So when you kill off all the coral, you destroy that as a viable carbon sink. It takes a long time to bring that back. So anyway, these are just some of the things that China's doing. And this idiot at the federal level, or Horgan, or take your pick around the country, want to talk about CO2 and straws. And it's not to say that single-use plastics aren't a problem. But, Greta Thunberg, I know it's been said before, doesn't go to India and doesn't go to China and lecture them, because they would throw her in a gulag and she would be treated very horribly by the Chinese state police.
Of course.
So they virtue signal, but they're very short on substance. And virtue signaling is it's part of the narcissistic society. It's what makes us tick now, is looking like we're good, having a nice Twitter bio that's got the rainbow flags and all the stuff that goes with it. We're not very deep and meaningful people anymore. And that's like, you need a fabric, you need a depth of character if you want to hold on to a nation.
Oh, I agree with you. And not to toot my own horn, but that's some of the platforms I'm working on as a member of the VCP. A little more genuine sincerity, blue collar ethics. Like, if you hired me to work your land as a garlic farmer, you would show me the pros and cons of what you want, what you need to get done. And if you set a timing for me, let's say, okay, be here at 6:30 a.m. and we work till 4. Yeah, I'd fucking be there at 6:20 in a heartbeat. That's just the ethics I have. And the ethics you have, you're willing to give me a job to do that, to help you bring your product to market, or to advertise your brand, or to help you accommodate your lifestyle through, okay, you're going to pay me and I'm going to give you labor. Oh, what a great exchange. We've missed that simple principle. We've missed a lot of that principle, especially when you watch these clowns on MSM and every question period, doesn't matter if it's CPAC or whatever news station is promoting it or not. Even Safe Space Cafe, he's quite funny. He puts on little tidbits of Parliament and question period there. And just the way he puts it together and some of the answers that these people have made, these representatives that work so hard to get elected in their riding and who have got this great resume of education and portfolios, don't have a concept of getting up and going to work every day and looking after the people that have put you in that position, right? As an NCO, if I screwed my troops over, oh God, I'd be dead. Socially and depending on the situation, literally too, and that's the thing.
Well, there's some heavy responsibility there, and I don't pretend to know anything about what it's actually like to be in the military, but I've done a lot of reading about the structure. You're talking about a solid structure. You're talking about a chain of command, but you're also talking about a very tight-knit group who, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, your lives depend on each other. So there's a huge element of trust there that builds bridges between a lot of differing opinions, I would imagine. As a society, we're missing that. We have a public education system, for instance. I like to talk about this one example. I went to a junket, and an NDP person invited me to a function with 200 teachers once. And what they were talking about is, lucky me. Well, it was actually great. It was an incredible experience to be sitting there. Number one, the taxpayers were paying for it, but what they were talking about was introducing a new movie curriculum into the Ontario schools, which would, every single grade, they would be introduced to one more movie. And so the discussion centered around which movies are we going to show the kids. And it was Leonardo DiCaprio flicks, James Cameron flicks, like all of these really lefty kind of focus. And I'm there, and they're playing drama, and a lot of these people they were in high school, they went to college, then they started teaching, and they bypassed the real world in that process because they're very insulated. When you go into the military, or not to put it on the same level or anything, but like you go into a factory, or you go into construction, or you go into farming, or you go into building, or you're a drywaller, or you're a pipe fitter, or you're a millwright. You do those things, you get life experience. You work in retail, you have to deal with people. You understand people. You learn something about the world where this process is bypassed. So it made me think, it's like they're talking about these movies they're showing kids, but they're not talking about getting Ayn Rand Atlas Shrugged read so that these kids actually get something different.
Exactly. Because or the Fountainhead. The
Fountainhead, like I remember being exposed to the Communist Manifesto when I was in high school, but I wasn't exposed to Rand. Or George Orwell. And luckily I had teachers who put that book in my hand, but not as part of the curriculum. It was part of the, here, check this out on your own time kind of thing. I learned a lot in school, but I didn't learn a lot from school in class. I learned a lot because I was outside of class and I was actually interested in what was going on. But the programming's deep. When I was in grade 10 or grade 11, I can't remember which one it was, I got invited to go to a Model United Nations. So here you are, you're this 15, 16-year-old impressionable, probably stoned kid, and you're going.
I was angry, but yeah, carry on.
They're taking you to this socialist junket. So you can play at the United Nations, and you can play at representing the country, and you can learn the routines. And a lot of these kids, they go on to get degrees. Then they move into NGOs. They move into governance. They move into academia. And it moves this mindset forward to the exclusion of all other mindsets. So the programming's real deep. And it also involves making sure the educators bypass other opinions and other points of view. Because even back when I was in high school, there were still teachers who had a lot of real world experience. They did something before they became teachers. That's becoming more and more rare. It's now just repeat, indoctrinate, have the sex education where you get the tranny come in and tell you that everybody can be whatever they want. And if you're 11 years old, you can have a sex change too. We've moved so far past the purpose of building a society with a value system that can actually build. It's now narcissistic and self-entitled.
Yeah. What can I get at this? It's all about me and my feelings. You know, there's one thing being selfish. It's another being self-absorbed, right? David Hemmington, Alberta has the same problem with socialists. They did vote for the NDP. Yes, we're not perfect. And if they're not careful, they will get it again. Well, you're possibly right, Dave, because I've actually openly criticized Ms. Notley on some of her platforms, especially when they had a freedom rally here in Alberta there a few weeks back. There were some people with tiki torches, and she made a big stink about it. Yeah, it was, oh God, Frank, holy shit. I read
the
this
tiki
article.
torches. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's racist. Those torches are racist. Well, it's like I got some duct tape here. Does that make me a kidnapper? You know, like come on.
It's ridiculous. A torch is a torch.
Like
You know, and you know, you see a white person that's got dreadlocks and it's cultural appropriation or
oh shit.
whatever the case. It's like, you know what? Get over it. It's not a big deal. And what are you doing when you signal like that? You're literally signaling to the most entitled people who will say, you know what, you're right, I am a victim. That tiki torch really offended me. And I am damaged by it. And I need some kind of rest. I need restitution. I need some paid time off. I need mental health leave because of a tiki torch. Like, I mean, that's who you're appealing to. So
exactly
what that signals is the politicians really believe that weak people are the majority, and that's who they have to appeal to, which says something about the structural deficits of our culture.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it seems like every time we turn around, someone gets offended. I lost a job because someone didn't like what I had to say about like your stance there towards teaching children sex ed. I more or less said, leave kids alone. It's like, how many parades do we have to celebrate one's sexual identity? Does it matter? I'm a veteran. We get one day out of the year. Even that gets compromised too, because there's people that make us stink about wearing the white poppies or this poppy or that color poppy. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just if you don't want to wear a poppy, fine, you don't have to, right? But let me have my 2 minutes of silence. Let me have a beer to celebrate my fallen.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
that's simple thing. And I'm not going to sit here and blow whistles and wear skirts and dress up and identify as whatever. You want to do that? That's fine. Go ahead and celebrate your life. But there were no parades given to me when, you know, I hit puberty and I realized I like girls. So it's, you know, whatever. It was a shit show because, okay, here you go, Johnny. Here's the awkward phase now.
Well, and honestly, you know, you make a good point there. Where's the parade that celebrates the dynamic that actually has made our civilization? A man and a woman married in union, having kids and raising those kids healthily. We know from science, we've studied it intensely, that a child that benefits the most from having a male and female in the house looking after them as much as they can, like having stable parents. And if you don't have that, it gets a little bit more challenging. But we don't have a day that celebrates the dynamic that actually keeps the human race thriving. We just we push it to the back burner and we demonize it. We tell mothers that they shouldn't be mothers, that's somehow lesser. That's how feminism became about demonizing motherhood, I will never know, to the point where women out there feel like if they stay home with their kids, even though that's what they want to do in their heart, the majority of women want to raise their kids at home in the heart. Even if they want to do that, they're doing something wrong. And it's like, no, you're doing something, like you're literally progressing the human race. You're continuing the species. How can it get more noble than that, you know? And
well, that's the thing. You and I would never understand what it would be like to bring life into this world. We just don't have the plumbing. We don't have the emotional or physical stamina to do that.
How dare you? I identify as a woman. I can be a woman too.
Yeah, well, where's my sparkle comment, you prick?
But it's so true. When I was in the whatever it's called, the birthing suite, I think is what they call it in the hospital. So there I am with 3 midwives. So there's my wife and the 3 women. They're all part of a club, and I ain't in it. And if I turn around tomorrow and I decide I'm a woman and I start parading around like I'm a woman, I'm still not going to be in the club because I ain't a woman and I don't care what anybody says. That's an exclusive club. That's
gonna
a
start
club.
doing that with your hair more often, Frank.
Oh. But it's like I have nothing but respect for it, right? Like, and as a man, like doing everything I can for my wife to enable her is a privilege, and I enjoy that. And she does the same for me, you know. Like it's a two-way street. But we've taken womanhood out of feminism, and that's. And now it looks like you see a lot of the more hardcore feminists. It's like they're just trying to be guys.
Mhm.
Really beautiful guys in some cases, but guys, it's like, what about what is uniquely feminine? What is
Mhm.
uniquely a woman? What happened
Mhm.
to it?
Well, look at the abortion or the dog's breakfast when it comes to transgender athletes.
Mhm.
What is that? You get some dignified women who train hard to be good soccer players, to be good netballers, to be good lacrosse players, track and field, right? And all of a sudden, here comes a guy who was, let's say, he might rate maybe 100th in a certain district as a man, as a male athlete, and all of a sudden, he grows his hair long, does a little thing, embraces a little effeminate features, and then he competes for a women's team. Now he's in the top. So which is it? You've just taken the opportunity from these ladies to compete
Mhm.
because of your identity crisis.
Well,
And yeah.
that speaks to the pussification of people in general, because we allow that to happen. We're
Mhm.
afraid that if we speak out, we might get insulted, we might get doxxed, we might and I understand the fear of losing your job or losing clients or all those things, but I mean, how far do we let it go? How far do we let narcissists, when there are men using the excuse of being transgenders, going into women's shelters, women's rape crisis shelters, and
Mhm.
taking refuge there, and then taking pictures of themselves in the bathroom at the rape crisis shelter with their erect manhood, mocking us? I mean, that's I'm not making that up. That's something
Mhm.
that happened. Or men going into women's prisons by saying, "Hey, I'm a woman now." In
Mhm.
addition to the destruction of women's sport, because there's a reason we have segregation in the sports. Men
Mhm.
shouldn't be competing against women because we'll win. 99% of the time
Mhm.
we'll win. It's just the way it is.
Mhm.
And most women recognize that, and most men do too. Like, we're not,
Yeah.
most of us aren't sadistic.
Well, it's not being
Um,
sexist. It's just being realistic.
yeah,
Right?
it, it
You
it isn't.
watch.
It's not saying you're lesser or anything like that, but there's a reason women compete against women and men compete against men. And when
Yeah.
you let men get into women's sport, it's no wonder that they dominate.
Mhm. And that's the thing, the big extent with the American national soccer team, the female soccer team, when they were complaining about the pay. It's like, well, firstly, when you watch international soccer, or my English friends like to say football, right? It's a different market. Like when you watch professional English, teams like Arsenal, Chelsea, all those big clubs. Okay, a lot of people spend a lot of money to see their clubs. They hang out with their crowds. They go to their pubs. They watch their games. It's a giant, huge market in Europe. Brilliant market. And now America, because the MLS, okay, now we've got a men's league here too. It's not as quick as efficient as European league, but there's a lot of fans. It's just a different caliber of sport. And what gets me is some of these female athletes, and good for them for training and getting to that level right on. You're setting a good example for young girls everywhere to achieve your goals. When they start talking about, well, we have to get paid the same, it's like, well, firstly, you don't play as many games. And secondly, there's not the market for it. There isn't. Like, that's just maybe 10 years down the road, there might be a market for it. But now, okay, you're not seeing 20,000 people go to a women's soccer game compared to, let's say, a man's soccer game. You might get 10,000 or more, but you're just not seeing the sales. You're not seeing what we grew up, when we watched hockey. Okay, if they did have a women's league, but I think it went belly up a few years back because they just weren't getting the revenue. No one's questioning the credibility of the ability of these players, but there wasn't the market for it. You go to a sports store, you're buying this glove or this piece of equipment because Gretzky had it or Messier had it, right? It's the whole marketing thing. You're not buying a hockey stick because Cassie Campbell used it in the 2002 gold medal game, right? Maybe there might be a few, but it's the whole marketing pattern. That's just the way it is. And what gets me was when people talk about, oh, in fairness, the pay. It's like, well, you play less games, which means you work less hours. You don't practice as much, and you're not in demand as what the men's leagues are and what the men's sport is. People see international soccer. They want to see the Lionel Messi's. They want to see the facsimiles of David Beckham's. They want to see all these great players. No one's saying women can't do it, but it's not in the market. That's the thing. And
Well, I think, one of the biggest problems with the entire movement towards equity is a one size fits all solution for everything, that everybody
mm,
has to be identical. Number one, it
mm,
removes individuality.
mm,
There's a lot of individuals out there with their hair cut short, dyed purple, with the big black rimmed glasses thinking they're individuals when they all look like a bunch of automatons. But there's a time and place. So I'm a
punk
fan.
rock look bad.
I'm a fan of free enterprise, and I'm a fan of free markets. I'm a fan of economics of scale and things of that nature. But I also recognize that when you get to a point that there's a monopoly, like a Google, that is becoming a powerhouse of a monopoly. When you have Facebook that's parading around as a not as a publisher, but as a platform, getting certain tax breaks and certain legal breaks because they talk about being a platform when they're actually a publisher and things like that, that there's a mechanism there where you might need state intervention to regulate or break that up when it poses a threat to the majority. So, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is you need a layered approach to how you address these shortcomings in society. If you treat everything like it's an affront to equity, you're going to kill the quality of the things that you're trying to equalize, because you can't. It's like the concept of you can't have everybody be a winner. In order for there to be a winner, in order for there to be elation and success, there has to be a loser. You can't have two winners in a war. Someone's got to win that thing. I mean, that's history, right? Like it's and you in a sport, you can't have just winners. So people have to get over the idea that there should be a guarantee against loss, or there should be a guarantee against exclusion. I'm not the guy you want crawling around in your crawl space in your attic. I'm huge. I'm not going to fit. I'm going to probably fall through your roof. So like I look at a guy, like I got a crawl space in my kitchen that I got to do some electrical work. When I'm looking for a person to go up there, I'm looking for somebody that's under 5'9", because they're going to fit real good, and I'm going to feel good sending them up there. So I'm discriminating. Basketball players are tall. You don't have short basketball players. Linebackers are massive brick shit houses for a reason. You can't have a 5'5" guy saying, I should be able to be a linebacker too, because you're going to be a very ineffective linebacker. It's not your job. Maybe you can be a quarterback. That guy, Patrick Mahomes, oh my God, can he throw a ball? And he's a shorter guy, but it's not everybody can fit in every single place or location. So equity
that's the thing. You know, in my time in the military, I was never a strong runner. I still do the work. You know, I couldn't do 5K in the amount of standard time. I had to train harder. I had to work harder at it. And when I was at the peak physical fitness of my life, I could do the 5K under 30 minutes. Great. Because I had to work harder at it. And that's the thing. In some cases, you know, there's some kids that are born to be good athletes. Some kids are born to be great scholars. Some kids are born to be, you know, great laborers. So be it. It's just a matter of that individual trying to find that out.
Well, that's what humanity's supposed to be about. It's like it's a bunch of puzzle pieces fitting together into a whole. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just
no. I agree.
We're all special in our own way, and we got to figure out where we fit.
Well, Justin Mears says, in regards to what we're talking about, ladies there, it's like complaining that women make more in porn. Probably so. It's the market. I haven't watched too much of it lately, but I would be in consensus. It's the market, right? So that's
what's that website? OnlyFans. I bet you. I would love to see a statistic as to how the percentage between women and men on OnlyFans. I mean, I would guess it skews towards women pretty favorably.
Oh, of course. We hear about all the starlets, the ex-Disney stars that have gone to OnlyFans because they're functioning adults now, showing off their wears and tears, and then turn around and complain about, don't objectify me. Well, which is it do you want then? You know, which is it? You know, someone accidentally hacked your phone. Right. Yeah. Everybody wants to be a Kardashian, right? So
that's it too. I mean, you have a society that's literally built on objectification, and then everybody gets offended when they get objectified. It's the like I was thinking about this today, just about Hollywood and how we're worried that Confederate statues being around in the United States, or statues of Sir John A. Macdonald, are going to glorify racism and turn people into white supremacists by their presence. But we're not worried that Hollywood's going to turn all your children into whores. Like, you know, there's a double standard, which is nothing new on the left. I mean, double standards are the way it goes.
Oh, exactly. So Dave Hemington says, we have women in our gun club and they can outshoot me and any other guys. Possibly. Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. There is a statistic out there that proves that some women are better fighter pilots in certain air forces. But that's all about the training and the dedication. No one here, like to tell my audience too, no one here is dissing the importance of females. It's just when we
No.
look at the importance of marketing and what sells in today's sports world, what sells on our shelves. You know, I've worked with women in the military that are exceptional human beings because they drove the body, they shot the foot, and they set the fucking most brilliant example I have yet to see. I worked with a couple of ladies that were great leaders, not because they're women, because they had what it took. And that's the thing. We don't emphasize too much on people because what they have, what it takes. It's because they have to fit in this certain group or this certain category. Okay. And it also comes down to when you're an adult, when the hell are you going to own your shit? And we're not seeing those examples either through mainstream media or our politicians and even our so-called celebrity models out there that toot their horn over this, making millions of dollars every time they their tush, hop on a private plane or hop on a private boat someplace, and they're telling me that I'm a criminal because I fill up my truck with unleaded fuel. So that's the thing. So for those just joining us, I am with Frank P. Vaughan, commentator, blogger, citizen journalist, former politician, family man.
Hey, I was never a politician. I tried to go into politics.
Former.
Do not insult me, sir.
Former candidate of the PPC party, farmer, family man, and patriot. If you like and see what you hear, you can follow Frank. Just follow the screen there at frankvaughan.ca. He makes how many times do you make videos? You make them every other day, or what do you do?
No, I mean I make them the last couple months. It's kind of whenever I can make them. But there's a large body of work there, that's for sure.
Sure enough. You can check out Frank, and you can donate at your free will too, please. Frank does accept credit cards, donations, and kind words. And you don't have to always donate. Frank kind of operates like I do. You don't have to donate to me. You can if you want to. You don't have to. I would like to make this a full-time commitment, but it takes viewers like you out there to make it happen. And I am very, very grateful every time I put a show up. I want to thank my audience and my listeners galore. Thank you. It's because of people like yourselves that make this happen. My guest tonight is Frank Vaughan. Please feel free to ask us anything you want to know. Just keep it clean, ladies and gentlemen. We don't care if you drop an F-bomb or a C-bomb, but keep the bigotry to yourself. And we're carrying on. We have, let's see here, from Freedom. Come across many women that are better shots than men. They seem to be more accurate than males when both groups do not have any practice. Well, okay, yeah, I can verify that too in some cases. But
Keeps
I can tell you,
husbands in line.
You better do the dishes than like them. I had a couple of female recruits I was instructing, and they were quite scared of the rifle. So we had to put emphasis on holding the rifle as if it was the last thing you can ever hold on to for your dear life. And they improved. But to make a long story short, I had to be a prick to make sure they got the job done. And that was my part as an instructor. That was nothing sexist. That was nothing demeaning. That's one of the that's how I was taught as a young recruit. So we have to get rid of this whole dynamic and what's a female and what deserves to be male. It's like you're an adult. We understand the biological differences, but there comes a time where we have to start adulting again. We shouldn't have to go to hospitals and other campuses to learn how to be an adult. This is something we should have been taught as children, how we were brought up. You got a bill to pay, you pay it. You want money, you go out and work for it, right? You give the best you can.
Something to be said for when you have a role to fulfill. You have a military obligation or you have a job function that you have to fulfill. The requirement of the job or the position should matter more than the gender of the person who's applying for the job. So if you can fill that role, you get to be there. But if you're a dude and you can't do the job, like in my current state, trying to get me to pull myself up over a log obstacle is probably going to get me disqualified from the military, and rightly so, I would add. I should be able to do that. And that's the other thing about equity. It takes an emphasis off of ability and puts the emphasis on the wrong thing.
Well, I always look at equity as something you build yourself too. Equity in your home. How do you build that value? How do you keep making things better? When I look at equality, it's like I believe everybody should have a chance to apply, not just be given a job. Everyone has a chance to apply, to inquire, to thrive. Everyone should have the chance to do it. The
Equal
equality of
opportunity and not
opportunity.
equal outcome. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Like Dr. Peterson said, like our British friends have said, like some American scholars have said, equality of opportunity. Just because you show up to a place doesn't mean you get the raise.
Mm-hmm.
You do your 3 month probation period, see how you're working out. And then after that 3 months, okay, we'll give you a little more responsibility. And then let's say 6 months down the road, holy shit, you've increased sales, or you've come in early at this time. Here's an extra $1.50 an hour, or here's an extra $2 an hour, or here's some insight on some benefits you may get. That's all depends on who you work for. And that depends on your leadership too.
Mm-hmm.
But being self-determined, being self-sufficient, I think is a stepping stone from everybody. Guide your own path. Basic liberty, right? Just don't hit people, take their stuff. That's simple. Mark Dietz says you can't raise people up who have no ability or desire to achieve. Yeah, if they want to sit and feel like a victim all the time, they're not going to see it until something devastating happens to them in their lives. You can only drag the achievers down to their level. That's how equality is achieved. Well, I want to see achievers get ahead. I want to see people get ahead based on their own merits.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple, after the last federal election, when you saw the whole 50-50 parity, it's like, really? Like that's showing equality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's playing favorites. Really?
Well, it's playing favorites, but it's also putting your finger on the balance.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody can't hack it, well, they get the job anyway because they have certain parts.
Yeah.
Or they have a certain pigment in their skin. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I talk to some of the friends that I have that have skin pigment or more skin pigment than I do, and they don't want to be judged on their skin pigment. They want to be judged on their ability to achieve things and to do stuff. They want to be
your character.
They have character. And a lot of these people who are driving this debate and this not even debate, they're driving this new paradigm, do not have character. They want to get it from somewhere else, but it comes from in here. And they don't understand that. They think they can achieve it by grabbing something out there.
Mm-hmm. No,
That's
I
another.
agree entirely.
You mentioned Peterson, and it's like he talks a lot about meaning, and I've thought a lot about meaning in my life as I've aged, and meaning comes from in here. It's how I define it, and it's something that nobody can take from me. Like I have a meaningful existence. I actualize. And I do that without being a rich man. I do that without leaning on my partial Native American heritage to say that, 25% of me is aggrieved and 25% of me should have a special check from the government because I've got a certain portion of DNA that makes my hair long and beautiful.
I thought that was just good hygiene.
Maybe. Well, yeah, I do wash it. I do wash it from time to time. Yeah.
It's there and sparkle it and so yes. Do you get shares in Pert Plus too or what?
No, that stuff's terrible.
No. Well, I wouldn't know.
No, it makes it way too puffy. Yeah. No, it's funny because people say to me, like, what do you do with your hair? And I'm like, I brush it occasionally and I wash it. That's it.
Crank the old motor head and have fucking heyday. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, it's not hippie hair, it's metal hair. Let's get that straight. Yeah.
That's right. Lord and Supreme Commander. Yeah. Also,
when you're a farmer and you're like a hand farmer, like you're in the field, you're off the tractor and you're like weeding things and you're doing whatever, right around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, the bugs come out. And when you got a ponytail, you can keep the black flies off the back of your neck pretty easy without interrupting your work. So what I discovered, I got my long hair because when I met my wife, she discovered it was curly and she said, you should grow your hair. So I grew my hair. And then all of a sudden I discovered I don't have to deal with mosquitoes on the back of my neck. I can just whip my hair and they're gone. And it's extra insulation in the wintertime or in the fall when you're planting garlic, you're a little bit warmer. And I think about cutting it off every day, but it's managed to survive so far.
Now, when you do that with your wife, though, does she talk about a slow motion kind of, montage when you do that? Like, do you do the whole slow motion thing? Kind of like 10 with Bo Derek on the beach there, and you just kind of, your hair just kind of flops in the sunlight or what? No?
I don't think I'm capable of that, to be honest with you.
Sorry, I had to be a smart ass there. Wicketer the Now, thank you very much. Gives us a super sticker of $5. Thank you very much, Wicketer. Very much. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. That was much appreciated. Thank you. But we're just talking about
picture of the beer in one hand and I believe that's a shotgun, I think, in the other hand.
I
It's
think she has a small child with her too. I'm not sure. So she's
oh well, that's a Sheila. That is a Sheila right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
we've talked before. She's an American fan, so that's great. So I always welcome her insight too. As far as I know, she was living or she still lives in California. So when you think of liberalism in Canada,
Good luck to you. Yeah.
wow, it's I know Joe Rogan left California. Ben Shapiro's thing about leaving California. I think a lot of these upstart independent media outlets are leaving the great state of California because of just the ridiculous mandates on everything, and not just the environment or taxes, everything, the social spectrum, what you can say, what you can do, how do you have to wipe when you can pick your nose, like everything. It's like friendly fascism, according to they used to have back in the 80s with some of my old punk rock friends, So
You
it's just
listen to some of the music that was written about California in the 1950s and the 1960s, and it talks about this place of fertile valleys, beautiful, clean cities, and what it's become today is such a shadow of what it was. And the left did that. Make no mistake, the so-called progressive ideology destroyed California and continues to destroy California.
Like it was supposed to be the mecca of entertainment. Everything, let's say music. Like look how many great stars, great bands came out of California, regardless of what generation. The '60s proved musical exploration beyond our comprehension. Everything from the Doors to Grateful Dead. Now, I never followed the Dead. I was never a big fan, but in their own right, they were musical geniuses. Jesus, the list is endless. Even some of the progressive music that came out of there too, progressive rock, more of the experimental phases, what have you. And without those stepping stones, you wouldn't have groups like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You wouldn't have had Rush. Even let's say the mighty metal entourage that came towards the mid 70s, early 80s. So each music had its stepping stone into, well, without saying the term progressive, like progressive as in musical exploration, getting this, trying this note, these different time changes, fusing this, fusing that. And now when I look at the music industry, what industry?
No, it's really bad. Like, and even
it's
if
a
you
shit
take
show.
you get out of rock and roll and things like that, and even new country, it's just I like my George Strait, I like my Garth Brooks, I like old country. I've always in the metal community, I'm often I cause controversy because I argue that Johnny Cash was the first death metal vocalist that ever existed because of the way that he wrote these songs. Like the one song is about being in an electric chair and he's only got 20 minutes left. And then there's another song about three guys in a desert and how they slowly die off. And like the topical subject matter is really, it's very real, like it talks about real scenarios of the human condition, which we tend to just gloss over. From that sort of creativity, we've come to Nicki Minaj and Lil Punk and garbage, like just pure,
terrible,
unadulterated
music.
Garbage,
Just terrible
garbage. Yeah, like what? How far we've fallen, and it's become just a business. It's like churn out more of the same, same sort of model. It'll sell. We'll lip sync the concerts because they don't have any talent. Like there are some beautiful bands out there that do beautiful live acts. Like if you're into bluegrass or folk, there's Mandolin Orange. There's oh man, now I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. But there's like all these little bluegrass bands, and then there's heavy metal acts that if you're into that, there's a band called Opeth, and they go on stage.
I've heard of them.
They do everything from like progressive rock and roll to sort of ballad like songs to really heavy metal songs, but every note is on point and it's very complex. When they go live, it's a beautiful act. They're lucky if they can fill a stadium with 3,000 people.
That's the thing. And people aren't geared to that anymore. They're not geared to hearing the
quality.
Great music.
Yeah,
exactly. Quality. Mark Dietz says, "Got to go. Please have Frank on again." CC, great show today. Well, thank you, Mark, for coming out. Thank you for coming out. Yes, please. If you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, don't be hesitant. Ask us anything you want to know. My guest tonight is Frank P. Vaughan, commentator, blogger, former PPC candidate, garlic farmer, and patriot. Hey, check him out. Now you can find him at frankpvaughan.com. right? It's quite the interesting site, quite a lot of videos, quite information, a lot of research he does to bring the word to us Canucks and the world too. So, but yeah, about music too. There, it's just it's hard to really find. Like I remember the days where you go to A&A shop. Remember A&A stores, A&A
Yeah.
records and tapes. Sam the Record Man.
I remember Sam the Record Man. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like it used to be
Stores
exciting.
like
You know,
that. Yeah.
I've been working part time and I get paid. Okay, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get myself this cassette or get this vinyl, or when CDs were coming, I could get this CD of this band. And I remember, you wait for imports. I used to work at a smaller record shop in Owen Sound, Ontario, and it's still rocking and rolling, by the way, too. And because of that, you get these mailing lists, and you can get anything you wanted around the world within 2 weeks. Right? Like it didn't matter if it was a Japanese pressing or an English pressing or this pressing. You'd have to pay for it, of course, but within 2 weeks you'd get it, and it was just phenomenal. And now, okay, yeah, you can still get vinyl and all thanks to the internet, but it's not as exciting anymore to look for music. You really got to hunt high and low now to find decent music. And with the lockdowns, good luck getting to
You don't. Yeah, it's music's not essential. Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
There used to be a really cool place in Cobourg, Ontario called Zap Records. And they had, I mean, of all the different record shops, and I can't remember the names of most of the places I used to go, but I remember the name of Zap Records because they had some really eclectic stuff. And there's something to be said. Like you can go on YouTube and you can type in something for the algorithm, like I want to watch heavy metal or something, and it'll kick you out some options. But it's not like going to a record store and flipping through albums and finding something that you wouldn't even know how to search for it on the internet. Like you literally have to come across it somewhere randomly in order to be exposed to it. And Zaps was like that. And plus you could meet all these people that were in Zaps looking for records, and they would know things that you didn't know, and you'd have this community and you'd spawn these conversations. And I don't know if we've adequately replaced that or offered an alternative to that sort of experience. And now with lockdowns and everything else, that whole thing, it's shut down anyway. Yeah. So even if you can find something like that, you can't access it anymore.
And that's the sad reality, because it used to be fun. I remember a record peddler in Toronto, and I'd find a couple of red vinyl albums of some obscure punk bands, and like, oh yeah, this is awesome, and just the rage and the emotion, and just it was fun.
Punk rock's pretty good. Yeah.
It was fun, and you'd see these bands live, you'd be half lit, slamming and moshing around, but then you meet the band after, share a beer, shoot the fat, and then go on, go home, carry on, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the thing.
Yeah, we I broke my teeth in the not literally, but figuratively in the punk rock community and in indie metal. But like it was such a community, and it was a place to, man, could you ever vent? Like, I mean, the mosh pit was this back then. Things changed, but back then, I mean, everybody was dancing around, bouncing off each other. Somebody falls down, everybody picks them up so they don't get hurt. Like
throw them back into the pit.
Throw them back into the pit. If you need to get out, you got to figure out how to fight your way out of it. But it was like you blew off some steam, and it was I do not regret my involvement in that scene at all. Now I could never quite get to living the punk lifestyle. I like the music, but the lifestyle was a bit too basic for me as time went by.
From my experience, things were tight. You got along with your bandmates, or you didn't. Some of my old bandmates, I still in touch with them briefly today. We got along. It just, we couldn't work together as a band, and that happens. Like it was a life experience, but because of those experiences, I had an appreciation for what was real and what was not real. What was a good band? Are you doing this because you actually believe in what you're doing, or are you just doing it because you want to get laid? That's the thing. Okay, anyone can get up on their stage and shake their tush and thrust forward, thrust left, thrust right. Okay, great. You might get some action that night, but in the same sense, it's like, whatever. I want to see these guys make an EP. I want to see them make an album. I want to see them make a CD. I want to see them tour. You want to see these guys do well. That's the thing. Dave Hamilton says he started music when he was 6, 10 years of conservatory, 2 years of music theory, and 50 years of playing live, and you can't make enough to buy a coffee. See, that's the thing. That's the gamble. There's a lot of poets I know that write some beautiful poetry, and they haven't published a damn thing, or they want to get touched because of their poetry. A couple of painters I've met over the years that painted some incredible landscapes, incredible animals, like just the detail, and then being passed because there's a certain feather off or there's a certain punctuation mark that's not there, just stupid shit like that. And people get finicky. But if there's any artists watching this right now, please just stand by your own, do your thing. It doesn't matter what you play, do your thing. Whatever music you play, whatever you like to do, dance, drink, whatever your art is, do it to the best of your ability, because you're the biggest critic when you think about it. So Dave also says, Randy, yeah, that's right, Dave. Randy's Records. I used to work for Randy. So Randy, if you're watching, there's a plug for you, buddy. So
yeah, I found when it came to even farm products or basically anything that I've ever done, people that support you and buy what you buy or buy what you offer, oftentimes are buying you. So if you build a reputation as being somebody who has some character or true to their word, or a beautiful family or a trustworthy method of growing, or all these things, you build relationships with people. And I found that for anybody that's sort of struggling, thinking, I can't get my poetry published, it might take a long-term plan, and maybe you don't need to publish it. You might be able to self-publish it. You might be able to promote it in a little different way, but you have to build almost a community to go alongside it. And that community will support you regardless of what you produce. So you could produce garbage because you're a good person and because they value you, they'll support you in your endeavors. But it's a time thing. It takes time, and it's I figured it out because I got thrown into retail. Like, I had to start selling the farm product in my food really quick. And at first I was very terrible at it. You got to picture a guy sitting like this at his stall with his hood up, thinking he's going to appeal to people who are walking by. You have to be a little bit more outgoing, and you have to
Are
learn
you selling food, or are you selling the gatekeeper? What are you selling?
Oh man, there's a picture.
Come to my farm.
That's it. Well, but it's personality sells, like, and also just being consistent, and that's I find that that's a way to get around sort of some of the limitations that are put in front of you in life. But that's I don't think I've ever discussed that before, because it's a hard thing to convey.
Well, it just proves that you're being honest and you're being genuine. And that's what we need. We need people to be genuine again without worrying about whatever status quo. My last episode, I talked about high school cliques. Right? We all remember our high school cliques, right? Every school has their little group of, your sportos, or your so-called nerds, or your so-called slower kids, or your well-to-do kids. And, give or take the decades, you had your preppies, you had your punkers, you had your jockos. And I look at our political system as that. And when I looked at high school in those years, those are supposed to be the years you're supposed to grow into something that you are naturally drawn to. And you're supposed to get out of that clique once you actually get into the workforce or whatever force you're part of. Now I'm seeing the clique coming back again. Who has this money, or who drives this vehicle, who agrees with this consensus, who doesn't agree with that consensus. It's like you said earlier in the show about the whole environmental thing. Okay, yeah, is climate change real? Well, it can be. I'm not saying it isn't, but I don't believe in taking more money from me and you to fight this. Where are the ideas on the table to fight the so-called environmental catastrophe? Where's the incentives to be green? Are they showing you schematics and how you can build a turbine to run your farm without jacking up the grid or hurting the birds? There's ways to do it. I actually have an encyclopedia here on how to be self-sufficient, right? It just takes money and investment and labor. Money I don't have at the moment. I've got the labor. Yeah, I can work at it. But instead of generating revenue to build these things myself, I will be on the grid. But where's the incentive for people to do that? If you want to be environmentally sound, you can get yourself off the grid and create your own. And then you can share your wealth if you decide to. You make some electricity for your place, you can share it with your neighbors. Nothing wrong with that. I remember them encouraging to do this in the 1980s because the whole ozone layer, right? But now the hole's patched. Now what? Oh, let's just take some more money for their gasoline. They won't mind.
Yeah, and do what with it? Like, how does it actually solve the problem? You still have an economy that's based on energy. And I remember I went to some environmental forum style debates when I was running in the campaign, and I got a very good reception because I said, these people to my right, they talk about carbon and they talk about green energy and all this stuff, but let's be realistic here. The transport grid requires a lot of electricity. That electricity has to be generated from somewhere. Where do you get it? Where do you get it's not just about what goes in your car, it's about what heats your home. It's about it's about so many things, and we're talking gigawatts upon gigawatts of energy that you people have never explained where you're going to get it from.
Yeah.
And we have this resource called petrocarbons. We have some of the cleanest coal in the entire world is right here in continental North America. It's cheap. It can bridge the gap. But if you think that solar panels and wind turbines are going to do it, well, I got oceanfront property in Alberta for sale. It's not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's just not going to do it.
And that foundation is held out by Saskatchewan sealskin bindings too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
For that bizarre show. Exactly. Howdy doody girl. Hey fellas. Hey Frank. Looking good, Crusty. Thank you. Missing you in ADM. Well, for those who don't know yet, I have taken over ADM's responsibilities for the Sunday Hidden Gem. It is now called the Sunday Fastball, or just the Fastball. Myself, ADM, and other guests, we get on, basically do the same thing as what ADM was doing. Talk about politics, life, shop life, all of our jobs, what we do, and just try to find common ground and common sense. So, Miss Howdy Doody Girl, you can find me every Sunday on the Fastball with ADM there too. So, but I appreciate the comment. Thank you very much. See, that's the thing. Self-sufficiency, I would think, would be adequate. I came across a story in the CBC a little while ago of a guy in PEI who started generating his own electricity via solar and via wind. He basically created enough energy for himself that he was willing to share it with the neighbors. But the municipality come down pretty hard on him because, it becomes a monopoly. That's the thing. So if you want us to be self-sufficient, then get rid of the monopoly. Let us have the monopoly. Let you have the monopoly. Right, and do what you want to do with it.
Well, here in Ontario, there's lucrative, or there was. I don't know what the state of it is now, but I'm talking 5 years ago when all these solar panels started going up in farmers' fields. So like there are these big concrete bunker or big concrete bases with a thing that comes up, and they have these 25 kilowatt panels. And they're about $75,000 a piece. And there were some very lucrative contracts, and there were subsidies available and everything else. But the catch is, has to be attached to the grid. You can't use it for self. It has to be sold directly to the hydro monopoly. They say there isn't a monopoly, but it's a monopoly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to break it down, it's still a monopoly. And to put it on your roof and do it yourself, there wasn't much available to you. And there's all these rules about being connected to the grid and everything else. So the last thing they want you to do is actually be independent. And so they talk about sustainability and they talk about self-sufficiency, but they, at the same time, the policies that they put forth do not encourage sustainability or self-sufficiency. They encourage centralized control. It's
crony capitalism.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's the same thing with dairy markets and the grain markets too, right? They want farmers to produce a lot of grain, but they're going to penalize them for drying it, and moldy grain. There goes a season's worth of work. If your grain gets moldy, guess what? Everything you invested in those tractors, all the diesel, all the harvesting, even the staff you've had to hire to help you, whether you have 500 acres or 1,000 acres, everything's gone when that crop is failed. And then you penalize any farmer for drying said grain to bring to market. That's the thing.
When urban thinking comes to dominate a society over the thinking of the land, this is what you get. The cities increasingly, and this is something that you can look at throughout human history, the more dominant the mentality of the cities, the more divorced from the land, the harder it gets for a country to prosper, because it loses touch with the things that actually sustain it. So they can talk about sustainability, and they can look at forests and farmland, and they can say, oh, it's great. You spread out your blanket, you drink some wine, and you look at they don't think about the sweat and the hardship that goes into it. And the fact that so much has to go in to that concrete jungle to keep that thing functioning. They want to talk about how to regulate it, but they don't understand how it works. And unfortunately, 80% of the population is in an urban environment. So there's only 20% of us who are trying to explain to them what is required to keep them going. So you get this crazy idea where you're going to tax people for drying grain. Are you? Like, have you thought about that? Like, is that really something you want to do? You want to make it harder to grow food? You know, is that to store food? Like, is that really something a city person should want? I don't think so.
Or they can encourage those city folk that want to penalize people for grain. Okay, well, here's a basic recipe to make your own bread. Knock yourself out. Oh, but how do I do that? Oh, exactly.
Hey, you've got a movement towards building condos without kitchens. What does that tell you about? Like, think about that. If you're living in New York City and you bought one of these condos that has no kitchen, and now your restaurants are closed. I mean, you still got Uber Eats, I guess, but
of course, yeah.
It's very short-sighted.
Yeah,
the way things are done are very short-sighted these days. And they sort of discount nature at the same time as saying, well, we care about nature, but you're discounting nature's effect. And you're thinking that humans are superior over the natural forces in the world, and we are not. We're still subject to them.
Oh, yeah. And we're still susceptible quite a bit. Unless they start learning how to cut meat and cook on a stick, then they're shit out of luck. I could use some extra training in my hunting skills again. I haven't hunted in a long time. Right, because the whole gun debacle, we don't know where they're coming or going. But simple going out, setting a snare, snaring a rabbit. Okay, there's food for about 4 days when you think about it. If you do it properly, there's some good meals. Simple chicken, raising chickens and stuff like that too. And that's the thing. People identify as chickens as pets now, not as a food source. Rabbits. As much as I would hate to kill a fluffy rabbit, sometimes you do. And I've had to do it. And, I'm not saying I felt bad. It's like, okay, this little fucker was sitting there nipping at my head and I cut it all up. Here you go, boys. That's just life. And prior to us, using our thumbs and, not using our wisdom teeth, we were part of the food chain too. Saber-toothed cats, short-faced bears. And you look at the history of how we evolved as a civilization, we were part of the give and take, the life and death cycle too. But until we invented things and started using tools and becoming, what was the Roman Empire, what was the Greek Empire, what was the Mesopotamia, what ancient China went through until we evolved, we've surpassed many things, overcome certain diseases and infections. But in the same sense, we are still part of nature. We are still part of the balance. And like you said, 20% of people in North America that live in the country or rural areas, a lot of the city folk forget that. And you're right, we have to keep reminding them. Start being self-sufficient, learning how to make your own bread again, how to hunt small game, how to capture small game, how to dry your meat. Let's look at our ancestors. Let's learn from the First Nations and how they did things. I've got a great recipe for pemmican. I'm just itching to try. It's just I got to buy the bulk beef, but simple things like that to promote longevity and survival, and just helping those who are less fortunate when it comes to it too. So
there's a guy on YouTube, Steve MRE, 1984 or 1982. Have you ever heard of him?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, he reviews military rations. That's his big thing. So military rations from all over the world, he'll just review MREs. But in one particular episode, he ate Civil War pemmican, like Civil War era pemmican, and he ate it. And he ate dried meat from the Boer War. And it's
he's still alive, eh?
He's still alive, but like,
do you need any shots?
Questionable. No, he didn't need any shots. He didn't get his
shit, did he?
He didn't get his COVID vaccine. But like, we used to make things to last, and we don't do that anymore. Everything's sort of spoilable or not meant to be kept. It's a very disposable society. Whereas very simply, you can go to the store and you can buy a bag of rice, and you can dry can that or dry process that. And it'll be on the shelf for 30 or 40 years, just as fresh as the day you bought it. And you can do that very simply. It's just a simple
soup
skill.
Beans, what have you too, yeah.
The
soybeans, the kidney beans, and navy beans. You go any no frills, not to try and plug free advertising here, but in the same sense, they've got tons of dry goods you can buy. Any bulk barn, you can buy certain dry goods that promote good protein, good balances. You look at the basis of the vegan diet. Okay, a lot of it's bean based, right? Which brings my point to about hemp. When you grow hemp, hemp hearts, that protein alone is fantastic. That can suit anyone's appetite. Doesn't matter if you're a carnivore, doesn't matter if you're herbivore, or if you're, it's excellent protein. I've thrown that in salads. I've thrown that in certain soups. Wow, what a difference. And it's good natural protein. It's right from the earth. It's not like any kind of tofu or soy. It's just really good for you. And that crop itself could be sufficient. You can make fuel from hemp. You can make bricks, clothing, food. There's 4 giant items you can make from a hemp crop. And the thing is, too, I think hemp can grow twice a year in this part of the country, too. So you get one great yield from it. There's an incentive right there when it comes to green. Another question here from Howdy Doody Girl. Question, fellas, do you think the rallies and convoys are helping? Or do you think the citizens are starting to think more of questionable actions? I'll let you answer that first, Frank. So your point of view is that.
I think rallies and convoys are better than alternatives. I think that I think it's important not to put too much stock in them in and of themselves, because you have to recall that the vast majority of the country isn't at those rallies, and the vast majority of the country is still on board. Like, I mean, it's all you got to do is get out to Costco, walk around in the streets, and just see how people are moving around, and you can tell that they got the blinders on. They're not really thinking about things. As far as the questionable actions, I keep seeing that come up. I see it in my comments all the time. Lots of people go, "It's time for a revolution," and it's like, you first. Like,
yeah,
everybody talks about this, but everybody wants to be in a gunfight until they're in it, because everybody gets shot. That's kind of how that works. And most, like, all these people calling for a revolution, it's like, okay, you first. Why haven't you done it yet? We're not there.
See a gunfight. They don't want to see a gunfight.
Nobody wants to see a gunfight. You know that. They're not. It's not fun. It's not glorified like Hollywood likes to make it.
It's not sexy, that's for sure.
No, it's not. I mean, I just finished reading another book on Stalingrad. That's the ultimate pit of human suffering. Outdoes any horror movie you're ever going to see in your entire life is to read about what German and Russian soldiers went through in that battle. And you can read 1,000 stories like it. Nobody wants a war. Nobody wants a gun battle. Nobody wants to bury their kids. Nobody wants to leave their kids as orphans. So, like, and we're full. Our houses are still warm. We're still quite comfortable. So when you have those things, there's no reckoning. I see that word a lot too. There's a reckoning coming. We're not there yet. We're not even close to there yet. So I think questionable actions are not on the table at all, because we're not suffering. Suffering is the catalyst to revolution. We're suffering a deficit of our rights, but we're still comfortable. We're well fed, and people don't want the disruption. They don't want to hurt their families. They don't even want to talk politically. They hide behind anonymous accounts for good reason or bad. And they don't want the disruption. So if you're uncomfortable with the disruption that free speech would give you, to the point where we allow kind of the things that we were talking about at the beginning of the video, where we allow people to come into the school system and teach kids that they can change sexes before they've had puberty. When we allow our kids to go into that, we're so far from the energy required for a revolution. So I don't think questionable actions are on the table at all. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to see violence. And you emphasize that point too about an actual gun battle. That would be devastating. That would be horrendous. And that would put a lot of people, there'd be the psychological implications of that as well too. Okay, we can all sit and watch a good movie about revolutions and the good guys winning the war, examples of glory. The 54 Regiment in Massachusetts, what they overcame to do their part for the Civil War. Stories about Vimy Ridge, stories about Dieppe, stories about Ortona, part of our history. Stories, the Vietnam War, exceptional stories from that dirty political mess. Even Afghanistan, from my experience, some people I've fought with and people that I knew that died. Some of my battles, you don't want to see that scale here. And just like I said, the implications, like we've got our heat, we got our home, we got our lights. Okay, we're good. Civil liberties are being cut as we speak, but there's an abundance of people getting out there questioning it, and all these rallies are gaining momentum, which is a good thing. Which is a very good thing. And I like to keep it that way. But I also like to see some people really, especially in the leadership spectrum, get out there and challenge that quote too. I want to see more members of parliament joining us. If you can see Elizabeth May sitting there and drink a fifth of whiskey and I'll go up and down with a Viper, then what's stopping some of these conservative leaders sitting there going to rallies and saying, we're with you. We agree with you. We want to change this too. We want you to go out into your job. We want you to open up your store. We want you to build your business again. Okay. Get rid of this mask mandate. Stop worrying about the beer bug and start living your lives again. Right. And holding those people responsible that have squandered all this bullshit in the name of fear. Right. How many politicians have you seen that you've read about tell us, okay, stay at home, don't do this Christmas, don't do this Valentine's Day, and they've gallivanted to some place in the tropics, or they went to Ireland, they went to Hawaii. It's like the old public school adage, do as I say and not as I do. Like I fucking hate that shit.
It speaks to the moral deficit. And when we back to the core question, a lot of these politicians are very comfortable too. And if they don't want to risk their comfort for a moral or righteous thing or action. So I admire, Randy Hillier. I admire Derek Sloan. I admire Roman Baber, who actually did the right things and paid the price for those things. But it speaks to a moral deficit that we're willing to allow as a society these things to go away as long as our creature comforts are maintained. And we want to avoid discomfort. So like arguments and things of that nature, we want to avoid that for as long as we can. And hope that someone else will pay that bill for us. And part of what I do is I try to demonstrate through my channel and through my actions that I've done these things. I've ran for a party. I've had swastikas drawn on my sign, and now the party I used to represent, the people who are left, they hate my guts. I do these things to do them, but also to demonstrate that I'm still living my life. I'm still okay. I'm still able to go in public and sell my garlic. Like I'm still able to function and thrive as a part of society while having my opinions. And I have people who, I've ate dinner with the guy who ran for the NDP in this riding 5 times. I like the guy. He's a businessman. We have very different political views in many ways, but I'm able to do that still. And that's part of the mission. It's like, I'm able to do this. So you should be able to have an opinion too, and not live in fear of having that opinion.
Well, that's the thing. That should be for everybody too. But my concern is, such as yourself, I do my podcast and I do this to get the words out there, get people talking again and question some of these ridiculous status quos. Like I remember in school, I remember some of my female teachers, and not to segregate female teachers, but some of those I've had with their opinions towards, military and, cadets and, oh my goodness, oh, you're a boy. Oh, well, you better walk this line or else, it gets redundant. And it seems ironic, as much as I disagreed with that status in my youth, I joined the military. Well, I had an aptitude for it. And plus I couldn't afford college and university at the time. Now I am thankful that I did. And I'm thankful I worked and I made some great friends. And I am thankful to the people I know to this day because of my time in service. And it's because of that which inspired me to come out here and have these little talks and to get out there and get the opinions going. I haven't spoken at a rally yet, but I plan to. It's just a matter of getting my funds together because gas is expensive. So it adds up. But like I say, my guest tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Frank P. Vaughan, commentator, blogger, video extraordinaire, free thinker, farmer, former PPC candidate, and Patriot, all around great guy. And he's got great hair too, ladies and gentlemen. Comment on his hair here, please. It's quite the metalhead too, quite the musical historian, I guess you could say. Do you play any instruments yourself at all, Frank?
Guitar, and I've been a vocalist in the past.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I play a bit of bass. I still have an acoustic. I'll strum on occasion, when I try to channel my inner Leonard Cohen or Gordon Lightfoot, then I'll pull out the guitar. Early Morning Rain is probably one of my favorites from GL there too. So
Gordon Lightfoot's amazing.
Yeah. The amount of alcohol that man has consumed, it's a wonder he's still kicking and touring. I know he made the people at Canada Club very happy for a very long time.
I think past a certain point of consumption, alcohol acts as a preservative because There's a lot of people who seem to be alive longer than they should be by the standard wisdom.
Man, but he can still play and sing, which is good for him. Sometimes I do miss the old LC Leonard Cohen, his wisdom. But effective songwriters and Canadian born and bred too. So in a way, there's one for the Maple Leaf. So I got a couple more questions here. So Justin Mears, is the military strict on weed smokers? At the time when I was in, yes, because it was considered a drug. It was a narcotic. They're also strict on people who had a drinking problem too. They didn't care if you drank. It's just if you had a timing one day and you showed up late because of your alcohol consumption, they would be very disappointed. And note the sarcasm in my tone here. I've had to deal with a couple of soldiers that were late for work because of their drinking, and I was not a happy fellow. So needless to say, I would say they are. I know they acknowledge it from what I've heard. They don't encourage you to do it, but they know it's legal. But they will tell you when you can have it and when you can't have it, regardless of when you're on duty or not. That's what I've heard from a couple of troops that I know today they're still serving. But at the time when I was in, big no-no. Big effing no-no. They treat it like a drug. That was it. So, but I'm pretty sure you can't be on duty and smoke it, basically. That's what I'm saying. But they don't care if you go home and have a joint. It's no biggie. So that's what I know. So any more questions, folks, please ask myself or Frank anything you'd like to know on the political spectrum, musical spectrum, heavy metal spectrum, however you mean. I miss Lemmy too. You miss Lemmy? Lemmy was kicking ass. Here's a guy 7 years old drinking JD and Coke all the time and rocking and rolling. I'd sooner wait in line to see Motorhead than I would the Stones. I'm not saying the Stones were not important.
But I would definitely go to a Motorhead show before I went to a Stones show any day. Yeah.
Rocking. Just yes.
Yeah.
When I hear the term Dr. Rock, I'm there. I'm fucking there. Exactly. That, and they got a song that reminds me of when I had my troubles there. They got a song from their Bastards album called Devils. And that kind of pulled me out of some heavy shit. I'm not going to be one of those kids going, "Oh, you saved my life." They just gave me a better perspective, ironically enough, in that song Devils from the Bastards album. Really. That and a band called Cobra and the Lotus. They come out of Calgary. They've got a song called something about light. I was actually listening to it today, and it's really good too. Pulling you out of your mental issues. And just simple preaching, just good human to human stuff. Highly recommend
Cobra and the Lotus.
Yeah, Cobra and the Lotus. I think it's Light. The song's called "Light Me Up." That's it. "Light Me Up." Great tune.
What was the song?
Tune.
What was the
"Light Me
song?
Up"? "Light Me Up." Yeah.
And the Motorhead song.
Motorhead's "Devils" from their Bastards.
Bastards. I'll check that out. So
it's excellent. Just some great songs that rock me. Even Nikki Sixx's band, 6 a.m. They got a couple tunes that are really good too. Lies the Beautiful People is an excellent one. Really good. So let's see. Blue Apple says, has you changed your mind about Max yet? Now I know you've had some issues. If you want to tell my audience your personal feelings.
I'm kind of surprised Blue would ask me that. I mean, I'm pretty sure we've had interactions on Twitter, Blue, where that question's been answered. I've made videos talking about the PPC structure and, how there's no constitution, how the people have no say, and how my loyalty to the project that was the PPC expired on the election day because there were promises made that were not kept to the members. And I've been very critical of Maxime and critical of his. One of the things that I was expecting to see was him own and take responsibility for being such a pro-China advocate during the Harper years. And that's in excess of what was the norm during the CPC. He was the most pro-China guy in the CPC caucus, advocating for every kind of opening of the door to China. And even up to 2017, when he was criticizing Justin Trudeau for not being fast enough to kick open the door for free trade to China. Mm-hmm. There was a speech. They finally memory hold the speech. So luckily I've archived it offline, but they finally got around to deleting it, that Max delivered and during his leadership run. And these were always things that were important to me that I felt he needed to explain. If he was going to change, people can change, but they have to explain where they come from. So yeah, I mean, how, people often say to me that they have the best policies. They like what they read, but policies are just words. And if you break your word to your own members, how can anybody expect you to keep your word when it comes to policies?
Yeah.
So I continue to hope that they'll give the members what they were supposed to give them. But for me, that's it's kind of a past tense thing now. Like I still talk about it sometimes because I feel a burden of responsibility there. But otherwise, it's kind of past tense for me now.
Okay, well, good answer, I guess. Yeah, because I flirted with the PPC idea there briefly too, but I just it just became, I don't know what to say.
I don't regret it. Like
yeah.
I would have been the best representative that the people in this riding could have elected, and I ran my campaign and I ran the way that I did debates and everything else and my outreach. I did it my way. Nobody restricted me, and I talked about China in those debates, and I said that that's something that we had to address and we had to answer for and we had to change moving forward. I held nothing back. But after the election, when everybody went on vacation and for 6 months there was absolutely nothing that came from HQ, so any energy we had was gone, and the promised constitution never materialized, so the members never got their right. And it's been one excuse after another, and the summary firings of volunteers, so just purging people out that worked really hard, and they didn't even get so much as a phone call. They just got a form letter email from HQ saying, you're no longer here. We're amalgamating your EDA. See you later. Like, it's very politics as usual.
True enough. Yeah, I hear you. It gets disappointing because you believe in something and all of a sudden you get that little letdown. Drives you nuts. I could say, Frank, you're welcome to join the VCP if you want to. But
that's the Veterans Coalition Party. I wish I could remember. I've talked to some boys in that party. It always seemed like a good bunch of people. So yeah.
Well, it's the thing is, it's a combination of all. We have educated people with degrees, diplomas. I'm not saying nobody who doesn't have a degree isn't educated, but we have a variety of people. It's people. We got veterans, frontline workers, ex-firefighters, ex-cops, presently serving police officers, presently serving firefighters. I've even had some emails from guys I knew in the military that asked me about it too, because they saw my advert for it. It's just a grassroots blue collar party. We can talk later after if you want to join. I'm not trying to recruit you.
No, I'm happy to listen.
The choice is there for you too.
Yeah, so, I'm happy to listen for sure.
From Tiffany Pincott, so tired of dealing with the push for the vaccine. I don't want anything to do with it. How are you guys dealing with it? Yeah. I got fried chicken there in the fridge and I made salad for you tonight. Well, okay.
I went to Emma's, so with a thing of fried chicken, I thought I wanted to well try it.
Okay, no problem. All right, thanks, dear. Sorry, just my wife delivering me food, so it was great.
Very nice, very nice.
Yes, it was. It was very nice of her. Yes. So, what do you think about the vaccine issue there, Frank?
I'm pretty much willing to go to the wall not to get it. My wife's on the same page. All you need to know about it is it's an experimental vaccine that would not be able to be distributed to the public if it wasn't through emergency order. The vaccine companies have been granted immunity from liability for any cause, any harm they cause. They're making billions on this thing. They have every incentive to make it look like a good idea, even if it's a bad idea. And at least a couple of them are completely experimental treatments that have never been done. And many of the companies that are manufacturing them have never marketed vaccines before in their life. So I don't know what more you want. I'm not the conspiracy theorist here. I've had vaccinations my entire life, but I am not getting this one. And what are we getting it for? We're getting it for a highly survivable respiratory infection that at first we thought might be very deadly, but it turns out that it's not, that it can be treated with drugs that we already have. It can be countered with nutritional. Why are we racing to promote a vaccine of such questionable basis over what? This isn't obesity. Yeah. This isn't diabetes. This isn't cancer. It's not heart disease. It's not other respiratory infections. It's not medical malpractice, which is responsible for 10% of U.S. deaths every single year. This is so low compared to what's been taken away and what's being forced on us. So like I'm prepared to be ostracized over it. If I'm not allowed if I'm not allowed to shop, I won't shop. If I'm not allowed to leave my property, I won't leave my property. Like I'll go to the wall over this one. Yeah. That's how I'm handling it. Yeah.
I understand basic vaccines when it protects you from typhoid and diphtheria and tetanus, whatever, simple things that used to kill people en masse, dark age diseases, they used to say. But because the survival rate of the so-called beer bug, vitamin D and zinc, which I do take every day. I think the worst sickness I have had in the past couple of years might have been a slight head cold I had when they had the big fire out here. And you inhale all the smoke and everything over time, a little scratch in the throat, what have you. But have some Buckley's and, drink some OJ and smack your ass, call yourself Judy, and you're good to go, right? So, key saying. But see, that's the thing, though, folks. You decide. I for one, I'm not going to take the vaccine. If someone says, "Well, if you don't take this vaccine, you get a job," then you're talking about human rights now, real human rights infractions. When it comes to that, you cannot force me to put something on my body that I don't want to. It's worse enough that I smoke cigarettes, let alone some strange vaccine that has a certain brand name on it or some procurement BS. And from being in the military, I can tell you lots of stories about the procurement process in the country, and it's a joke. So when I look at countries like Britain and some of our friends in the States who get these things lickety split, what's our excuse for the people that want them? That's the thing. What's our excuse? You have this procurement board that sits there and scratches their butts and their heads going, "Oh, wow, the board needs this, and oh, the board needs that." No, the board needs to be fired, and it needs to be, better people with logistics backgrounds for starters, and especially people with proper medical backgrounds for starters too, to get on these boards when it comes to anything for health. That's just me, though. So let's see here. So I got a few more questions here. What is the Science Advisory Committee brutally attacking Doug Ford's social justice warriors? That's a good one. You want to think about that, Frank?
When it comes to Doug Ford, he never appears at a press conference that he doesn't have Christine Elliott right at his side. So there was such a big hoopla over him winning the leadership and that they were going to lose the election because, Christine Elliott was the chosen one. Ford screwed it up. There was a lot of excitement because Patrick Brown was a nightmare. Like there was all this stuff. So what if, and this is just a what if sort of scenario, but what if Ford has been pressured into letting bureaucrats guide his policy directives? What if he's been pressured by Elliott and these other politicians in provincial politics to do what he's been doing? What if in tandem with the federal government, in a way, even informally, they've kind of put him in a corner as the figurehead of this government? And this is a way of tanking his sort of populist movement that originally when he started out, there was a lot of hope. But now he has been, and I'm not trying to absolve him of responsibility. He's killed small business. He's done a lot of things. He's locked us down. He's put his name to a lot of really bad stuff. But on the flip side of that, and this is just speculating, what if he has been set up long game by his opponents for a political fall over this? And that's quite possible too. So, there's, it is interesting, I'll say, because the left on Twitter was constantly criticizing him because he hadn't gone far enough with his lockdowns. And then he went far enough with his lockdowns and they started attacking him because of civil liberties. I saw Gerald Butts attacking Doug Ford over going too far on lockdowns. And I'm like, this is upside down world. But with the left, that's kind of how it works. Moral relativism is, it's a big thing. So yeah, maybe he's not as bad a guy as he looks. Maybe he was set up because it's not to absolve him of responsibility, because that would mean there's a leadership deficit there. There's a charisma deficit or a confidence deficit, or his inability to see the trap and navigate his way out of it. Like he bears responsibility for that, but there could be something more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah, I would concur with that too. Because I had a lot of faith in him when he beat Wynne and her ridiculous green agendas and her ridiculous SJW stances. Ontario's open for business and now it's not. It's like, ooh, Okay, Buckeye, what are you trying to promote here? And it's the same thing with the Manitoba premier too, telling people, okay, we're going to shut everything down, and okay, what kind of dirt's on him? What's he promoting? Why is he promoting it? The economy is getting devastated, and yet, well, it's devastated because you're telling people what they can buy now. I don't know about you, but that's pretty fucking socialist to me. What they can have, what they can't have.
Oh yeah,
the
when they're telling you what you can and can't buy, when you can and can't buy it, what you can do and can't do with your own property. Like another thing that I've highlighted is there's a ban on evictions in Ontario. So you as a landlord are partly liable for the actions of your tenants. So if you've got tenants living in your property and they're cooking meth and they blow up your house, you're partially liable for that activity. You have to go to court and litigate it. But now you can't even kick them out.
Yeah.
And that's not socialism? Where you can and can't be, what time you can and can't be there, where you can and can't work, what you can and can't sell, what you can and can't do with your own property. I don't know what more you want.
It adds up. It adds up. It adds up. Well, we got time for a few more questions, ladies and gentlemen, before we shut this down this evening. My guest tonight is Frank P. Vaughan, commentator, blogger, former PPC candidate, family man, garlic farmer, all-around great guy, and great hair too, and metalhead aficionado. Yes, exactly. We're talking about politics in the social spectrum of our beloved Canada. Please get us a few more questions in before we shut this down this evening. Remember, drop all the F-bombs you want. We don't care. Just don't be bigoted, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to follow Frank, you can follow Frank at www.frankvaughan.ca. You can follow his page there. Is all of his videos, all his blogs, everything that he says, and everything he holds dear. So, and if you like what you see here too, ladies and gentlemen, please consider donating to crustycanuck.ca/donations. You don't have to donate, but if you want to, please. I like to make this a full-time commitment. And tomorrow or Saturday, I should have another episode of the Crusty Canuck podcast up and running. And please join us every Sunday for the Sunday Fastball. Myself and Anna Daniel Mazet. We have anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 guests. We talk about politics, shop, and things that thrive us and drive us crazy in Canada today. So please join us every Sunday, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Like I say again, my guest tonight is Frank P. Vaughan. Please ask us a few more questions before we shut down this exceptional episode of the Thursday Fastball. Let's see. From Justin Mears, we have, our leaders are puppets of the mainstream media. Well, of course, Justin made that happen. $600 million. He bought it. You know, if it wasn't for his incentive, I don't think the Toronto Star would be up and running today. Or any major Ontario paper, for that matter.
It's it's a union of thought. It's a certain mindset, a certain set of politics, and it is promoted by all levels of media and politics. There's really no choice here. You're going to be swimming in it. And we've got Hans Gruber. I don't know what his department is, but that the person who's looking to bring in the internet content regulations, which will shut down even further anybody that has an alternative voice. So even people like myself I've created a website where I have the bandwidth that costs around $200 a month, but I can host my own videos. I have every kind of technical capacity there. And the idea being nobody can shut it down. Well, Hans, whatever his real name is, I don't know what it is. That's the guy from Die Hard, the villain from Die Hard 1, because that's exactly who he looks like. If he has his way,
Stephen Gobert.
yeah. But who
the fuck is Hans Gruber? Oh yeah, but wait a minute, no, oh yeah, Gobert, yeah, the goose lover, because he climbed the CN Tower back in 2001, saving the geese. Yeah,
but it's quite possible that he'll try and come after private websites too, which it would be devastating, because it's the last. Even when they went after, whether you like him or not, even when they went after Alex Jones, they couldn't take his website. They couldn't take his website, and they had to leave him with one bank account. So they unpersoned him every other way they could. And of course, the president of the United States has been unpersoned, but they couldn't take his private property. They can't take, I think it's 45.com, but he's got his presidential, post-presidential websites up and running now, which they can't take. But websites are typically untouchable. And if Hans has his way, maybe they won't be. So it all remains to be seen. But I mean, these are the things we have to do just to have an opinion now. free speech driven into a corner. And I mean, I get spam all the time from people celebrating the fact. They're just like, you know, it's too bad they didn't take your social media, Frank. And I'm so glad you're driven into a dark corner of the internet. That's where you belong, you vile person. You're a terrible father. And like all of that, you would not believe the vile stuff that these so-called progressives will lay at your feet. And I feel really bad for new people coming in who just want to have an opinion. It's tough because you will face this vitriol. And if you don't have thick skin yet, you take it to heart because you treat that person who's talking to you like they're an actual empathetic human being when they're not at all. They're an anon who's separated themselves from empathy, and they're treating you in a way that they probably wouldn't treat you one-on-one in person. It's very difficult to exercise your free speech right now. You have to be pretty thick-skinned.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like playing. Well, you're playing the big boys. You get a spot in the hockey team, and you get these guys who have been in the league a couple of years. You know, you got to live up to their expectations. Do what you can, and take the criticism. Unfortunately, they're not offering criticism. They're offering, they're offering to destroy you. Because of opinion, and which is to me is, like I said, if it ever came to a shooting war, they'd be the first to go, because if they can't handle words, they're not going to handle real violence. That's the thing. Yeah. And it would suck being them. You know, that's the thing. They're going to ban Bitcoin. Yeah, I heard about that, but that can be changed too. There, Justin. Kyle Scharf, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't the premiers supposed to play ball with Trudeau with regards to locking down? Otherwise, Trudeau would have assumed control of the provinces. I think they were, but there's always some kind of smoke and mirrors with these mandates, I've found. Frank, what do you say?
I don't think there's enough power in the military, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, to actually take over the provinces. What do we have now? What is it at? What's the standing army? Is it it's not even 200,000, is it?
Oh God, it hasn't been that high since
140,000, I think.
No, I hate to tell you. Last time I checked, about 70,000, maybe okay, 70.
So 70,000.
That includes the reserves too.
Yeah, so 70,000 personnel that are going to have to at least do 2 shifts, if not more. I don't know how the hourly structure works. You can't. One thing's for sure is you can't have a personnel operating 24/7 because they need to sleep too, even if it is only 4 hours a night. Like there has to. So you have a vastly geographically spread out population. You have Toronto that has the GTA has, I think, 9 million. You have Montreal that I think has 2 or 3 million in the greater Montreal area. Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. There's not enough personnel to actually assume control of the individual provinces. Yeah. And so maybe it would have, maybe that was the narrative or the narrative threat, but I'm more inclined to believe, and you can call me conspiratorial, that there's it's kind of like when you see Pierre Poilievre would have made a great leader. He was going to run for the leadership and whatever. And then all of a sudden he drops out. It's like, why? And the why, maybe there's something. There's some sort of skeleton. There's something in the closet. Same with Doug Ford. The same with Pallister. What happened to Pallister? We had these covers where we were going to have the resistance. I think Kenny would be more aligned with Trudeau if he wasn't under such intense pressure by the electorate to at least look like he's being a little bit different. Like he doesn't go as far as the other premiers. No, I think there's an element of voluntary cooperation here. Like there's a unity of messaging and cause, and there's also just politics in general. If you've accepted the notion, which they have, this isn't you and me, they've accepted the notion that this is a crisis, that they went from saying that there was no crisis and that this was the common cold to it is the worst thing that we've ever faced in human history, and we have to borrow all the money. We have to shut down all the things, and we got to make sure nobody's having any fun anywhere because it's the most important thing. So politicians are really weak people to begin with. That's my experience with them. And they don't think like human beings. They think in a completely different way. And if they've backed themselves into a corner that they don't know how to get out of, then that could be what you're seeing. They just do not know how to extract themselves from this, because as soon as they let go of their grip, someone somewhere is going to die, and the opposition is going to hang them with it. And I don't think this is a moral thing. I think it's like people don't want to lose their jobs. They want those wages. And being an MPP is a lucrative thing, and being an MP
Oh
is a
God,
lucrative
yes.
thing.
Oh God, look at the
So-
money the pay raises they just okayed the past couple of years too.
Oh,
They
yeah.
got to save their asses. They have such a hard time in their Zoom meetings. It justifies it all.
Oh, it's so tough. You can't even put on your clothes. You don't even have time to put pants on. You're so hardworking.
Oh, I know. And you have all that
can't
time to
even
go
get
do
clothes
a
on.
leisurely jog, and oh my God, the hardships of running in downtown Ottawa and smelling the fresh air and the
So I mean,
history.
you don't necessarily need, and I'm not saying it's not there, but you don't necessarily need some sort of advanced, what would you call it, conspiratorial thing. And I'm not saying it's not there, but to understand that this is what politicians do. They screw themselves all the time because they don't operate in the real world. They operate in the political realm. And if you have a conversation with political advisors, which I've done, and you have conversations with political thinking people, it's like talking to someone from a different species. It's weird. They don't think like you and I do. It's very strange. So
yeah, scary. It's like a sense of entitlement almost. But some of the politicians I have talked to, especially since I threw my hat into the VCP ring, you almost see a panic, which I think is good because I like to see them panic. I want to see them on their toes. I encourage all my listeners, get them on their toes, write them, call them, send them emails. Hell, write 10 or 20, duplicates of a letter, mail them, bombard them. To get them thinking, oh shit, I forgot. I'm working for this riding. I'm not working for this party. Right? Sorry.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think any of those activities are useless. They all serve utility. And if we did those things en masse, then we would probably see a reaction.
definitely. I'd have to say the guy in this riding, he's conservative. Nice guy. I had great talks to him. He gave me a real boost, helped me get my benefits and everything. But I remember the last conversation, I said, well, you might see me at a debate if the election's called. He kind of snickered. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, I joined the VCP party, so I'll be running the same area. So I look forward to having some good conversations. So, like I say, nice guy, down to earth. He worked in the patch for a long time, so he's well grounded there. But, like everybody else, they're towing a party line. Okay. But I don't want to tow a party line. I want to tow the constituents line. A lot of people out here who need to get their farms in order, who want to get the oil flowing, who want to see proper equality, meaning everybody has a chance to get things done and not basing everything on gender or color or spectrum. So I'll take another question before we shut her down this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, like I say, my guest tonight is Frank P. Vaughan, commentator, writer, blogger, video producer, garlic farmer, ex-PPC candidate, all-around nice guy, and patriot. So please, you get a couple more questions here before we shut this down. Anything you'd like to add, Frank?
No, not in particular. Just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good thing. We need that. Enjoying the conversation, getting the words out there, letting people think for themselves yet again. You can be a critical thinker without having a degree or getting a kind of BA or GD this or GD that or a PhD. I, for one, I don't want to get a PhD in diversity and equity. I'm very diverse. Do you ever see that advertised? I see that advertised my feed once in a while. Get your PhD in diversity and equity. It's
what
like,
does
well,
that even mean?
What?
Yeah.
Yes, I acknowledge you, but what does that mean? Do I need some kind of medical, diagnosis to prove that your pigment's different than this? Well, I can see it, so there you go. It doesn't bother me, folks. All right, folks. Another question. Oh, from Blue Apple. Here we go. Thank you, Christy and Frank. Yes, you're welcome, Blue Apple. Please tune in every time. Just like remind my audience out there too, you can see me every Thursday. I do a fastball. I try to have an interesting guest. And every Sunday, I've taken over the duties from Anabanu Mazet. I look after the hidden gem, which is now called the Sunday Fastball. And 4 or 5 or 3 or 6 of us, we get together, talk shop, talk life, talk politics, and how it affects us and other Canadians. And please stay tuned to my community page on YouTube and Facebook for updates of the Crusty Canuck podcast. I try to get 2 episodes out every week. And if you feel like donating, please consider donating to crustycanuck.ca. You don't have to, but I'd like to make this a full-time commitment. And without you, my listeners and viewers alike, this would not be possible. So pat yourselves on the back for being such a great audience. I have been Crusty Canuck on this beautiful 22nd of April, 2021. My guest tonight was Frank P. Vaughan. Anything you'd like to leave off on, Frank?
No, I appreciate it. I know it's trite to say, but I appreciate your service for the country and your continued service for the country as a podcaster and just as a patriot in general and free thinker. And hope we can do it again sometime.
Well, definitely. You're more welcome here. You're definitely a friend of the Crusty Canuck podcast, I would say, too. And maybe you can come out Sunday on the Sunday fastball. Maybe. We'll see how it goes. But still, thank you very much to my audience. Thank you again, Frank, for being a part of this show. And thank you all again for being such a great audience. And like I say, stay tuned to my community page and my Facebook page for updates. I have been Crusty Canuck, and on behalf of my my guest, my host, my new friend Frank, and my guest, thank you for coming out. And remember, humanity and merit wins the day. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Take care.